Hey truckers, today we're seeing part 18 of Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School. Let's dive into the video. Gu Ning didn't move other parts of the car but immediately took out a power crystal and put it into Tang Yinfan's mouth. At the same time, she held his hand to put her power into his body. Actually, if Gu Ning was able to put her power into Tang Yinfan's body, there was no need for him to take the power crystal. However, there were so many people around. If they noticed that Tang Yinfan recovered soon after Gu Ning held his hand for a while, it would cause unnecessary sensation and trouble. Some people saw Gu Ning put something into the injured person's mouth, and they were worried that it might harm the injured person, but none of them said anything. Quan Mingkai didn't cut the line with Tang Yinfan, so when he heard the sound of Gu Ning removing the car door, he raised his voice and asked, "Hey, can anybody there hear me?" Gu Ning had acute hearing and noticed the phone lying at the foot of the back seat. She used her free hand to touch its screen and saw Quan Mingkai's name. "Mr. Quan, I'm Gu Ning. Uncle Tang had a car accident and I'm rescuing him now. I know that you're worried, but he'll be fine. I'll call you back later." Gu Ning picked the phone up and said. "Great." Hearing Gu Ning's voice, Quan Mingkai was somewhat relieved. He believed that Tang Yinfan would be fine as long as Gu Ning was by his side. Of course, he was still slightly concerned about Tang Yinfan's condition. "I'm heading to the airport right now and I'll be City F around 6:30 p.m., Quan Mingkai said. "Great, please don't tell Grandpa Tang and the other family members in case they'll be too worried," Gu Ning said. Quan Mingkai agreed, then they both hung up. Within 2 minutes an ambulance and the police arrived. The leading man of the hospital crew was Nguangming and Qian's father, who was the director of the Central Hospital in City F, while the leading man who came here with the police was Yuan Jisung. Seeing that someone damaged the accident scene, they were all displeased. "Hey, what are you doing? Don't you know that you've damaged the accident scene?" a policeman shouted at Gu Ning and was about to pull her out. However, before he could cuff Gu Ning opened her mouth. "Stay away!" She sounded cold and unstoppable, and the policeman was struck dumb for a second, standing still. Hearing her voice, Yuan Jisung recognized that she was Gu Ning, so he stopped the policeman. Hesitation. "Let's stay away from her now, we can get the driver out first." The rest of the people then went to move the driver out of the car. The policeman was still a little displeased, but he had to follow Yuan Jisung's order. Hearing Yuan Jisung's voice, Gu Ning knew that he came here too, but she was still focused on putting her power into Tang Yinfan's body. Yuan Jisung understood that Gu Ning was rescuing the injured man, so he didn't go ahead or interrupt her. "Mr. Yuan," and Guangming looked to Yuan Jisung with doubts. He didn't understand why Yuan Jisung would allow a young girl to move the injured person in the car. It could be dangerous. "She's Gu Ning," Yuan Jisung said in a quiet voice. Hearing that, and Guangming was surprised. He didn't expect that this young girl in his sight was Gu Ning, and he couldn't be more familiar with that name. Although he hadn't attended Su Anya's birthday party, he had heard about what had happened that day, so Gu Ning left a good impression on him. He was a famous doctor. Although he didn't quite believe in Gu Ning's special medicine, he was always curious about it. He also wanted to contact Gu Ning and study her special medicine, but didn't know how. He had asked Lan Yubin, but Lan Yubin refused to give him Gu Ning's phone number without her permission. Since he met Gu Ning in person now, he was excited and curious to see whether she was able to cure the injured person. And Guangming didn't know that Qian and Gu Ning were close friends, and he had no idea about the relationship between his younger brother, Guangyao, and Gu Ning. If he had known that, he would have successfully contacted Gu Ning. If Guangming found it out later, he would be very upset because if he had found it out earlier, he wouldn't have been so fretful for these past days. With Yuan Jisung's protection, nobody interrupted Gu Ning. However, no matter how much power was put into Tang Yinfan's body by Gu Ning, he was still unconscious even though he already stopped bleeding and his wounds were healed. Gu Ning frowned. Why? Not knowing the reason, Gu Ning kept putting her power into Tang Yinfan's body trying to wake him up. However, she was losing her power in a large amount and her face turned pale, while Tang Yinfan was still unconscious. Gu Ning had to draw her hand back and tried to move Tang Yinfan's body out of the car. Seeing that, Yuan Jisung walked ahead and said, "Girl Gu, let the police do it." Yuan Jisung didn't think that Gu Ning, who was just a young girl, would be able to move a grown-up man from a seriously damaged car. "Thanks. I can do it alone," Gu Ning said. Although she had consumed a lot of her power, she was still strong enough to move Tang Yinfan out of the car. Yuan Jisung wanted to say something else, but Tang Yinfan was moved out by Gu Ning at this moment, which shocked him. Everyone around was also astonished by Gu Ning's strength once more. Gu Ning then picked Tang Yinfan's mobile phone up and left the car. "Girl Gu, how's the injured person?" Yuan Jisung asked. "The wounds are mostly healed, but he's still unconscious. Let's send him to the hospital now." Gu Ning said that to both Yuan Jisung and Quan Mingkai. Hearing that Tang Yinfan was safe now, Quan Mingkai was relieved. "Hurry up! Move this injured man to the ambulance right now." Yuan Jisung gave an order, and a group of people immediately came to move Tang Yinfan to an ambulance. In the meantime, Gu Ning talked to Quan Mingkai for a short while and hung up again. Seeing that Gu Ning's face was very pale, Yuan Jisung asked worriedly, "Girl Gu, are you all right? You don't look very well." "I'm fine. I just lost a lot of strength." Gu Ning smiled. Hearing that, Yuan Jisung was relieved. "Miss Gu, nice to meet you. I'm the director of the Central Hospital," and Guangming came over saying to Gu Ning politely. "Vist and Velben, CM for new updates." Gu Ning smiled and replied, "Nice to meet you too, Director In. I heard that you're In Qian's father." "You know In Qian?" And Guangming was greatly surprised. "Yes. We're close friends." Gu Ning smiled. And Guangming took a long breath in. It was really shocking news for him. "Uncle Yuan, I'm afraid that I can't drive now. Can you arrange someone to drive me to the hospital?" "We can use the ambulance stopped there," Gu Ning said. She was worried about Tang Yinfan, so she decided to follow him to the hospital. "No problem, I can drive you there," Yuan Jisung said. He didn't ask her why she wanted to use the ambulance instead of his private car. After that, Yuan Jisung followed Gu Ning, getting into the ambulance. And Guangming was eager to ask Gu Ning about her special medicine, but obviously it wasn't the right time now. And Guangming came here with the ambulance, so he naturally went back to the hospital with the ambulance too, but he sat in the front, while Gu Ning stayed in the back by Tang Yinfan's side. Before long, they arrived at the hospital. And Guangming had arranged a VIP patient room beforehand. Although he didn't know the injured person's identity, he knew that the man had to be very important since Yuan Jisung had informed him in person. "Miss Gu, do you know him?" Seeing that Gu Ning accompanied the injured man along the way, and Guangming was curious. "Yes," Gu Ning said, but didn't give any details. And Guangming also stopped asking. After they arrived at the hospital, a doctor instantly conducted a checkup on Tang Yinfan. "Girl Gu, you can have a rest at home now. It must have been a long day for you," Yuan Jisung said. "Thanks, I'll stay here," Gu Ning said. Yuan Jisung was surprised. "Do you know him?" If not, there was no reason for her to stay here. "Yes," Gu Ning simply said. Although Yuan Jisung was curious, he didn't ask further. He wasn't clear about the injured man's identity yet, but he was sure that the man had to be a senior manager of the Tang Huang Group. To his astonishment, Gu Ning was able to meet a senior manager of the Tang Huang Group. The more familiar Yuan Jisung was with Gu Ning, the more he was surprised by her. The exam result was out a few minutes later and the doctor said that Tang Yinfan was fine and would wake up in several hours. Gu Ning, on the other hand, didn't think that it was that easy. They had no idea that there was already a lot of magical power in Tang Yinfan's body now, and he should have woken up right away. However, he was still unconscious. Gu Ning was confused, but all she could do now was to wait until Tang Yinfan woke up. Hearing that the injured man was fine, Yuan Jisung was relieved. After that, Yuan Jisung called Quan Mingkai at once to tell him that everything was fine. Quan Mingkai was on the plane when Yuan Jisung called him and his phone was turned off, so he missed Yuan Jisung's call. The patient needed rest and quiet, so Guangming left with the other doctors, leaving Gu Ning and Yuan Jisung in the patient room. The/W novel chapters are published on no/vel/bin.co/m. Gu Ning didn't want to leave now, so she asked Yuan Jisung to send the principal's car back to her school. Yuan Jisung agreed without hesitation and told his secretary to do that. Yuan Jisung was going to attend a meeting soon, so he left and told Gu Ning that he would come again in the evening. After Yuan Jisung was gone, Gu Ning gave Tang Yinfan a glance and thought for a while, then made up her mind and called Gu Man. When Gu Man answered Gu Ning's call, she was in a taxi with Gu Ning and Wang Sufan. They were on their way to find a new apartment for Wang Sufan. "Hi, Ning Ning, aren't you supposed to have your classes now? Why are you calling me?" Gu Man asked. "Mom, he had a car accident and he's still unconscious. We're in the central hospital," Gu Ning said. "What?" Hearing that, Gu Man was shocked. In her memory, the man was killed in a car accident. They finally met each other after 18 years, but he had a car accident again. Was he going to abandon her once more? No, she wouldn't allow it to happen. Seeing that Gu Man was really scared, both Gu Qing and Wang Sufan didn't know what had happened. "What's wrong?" Gu Qing asked. I'll be right there," Gu Man said. She had no time to explain it to Gu Qing, but said to the taxi driver, "Please, go to the central hospital now." "Sure," the taxi driver said. "What happened?" Gu Qing was a little nervous. Gu Man did her best to calm down, but her voice was still trembling. "Mr. Tang had a car accident, and he's in the central hospital now." "What?" Gu Qing was also frightened. Although she had only met Tang Yinfan once, she knew that he was a good, reliable man, and she also had sympathy for him after hearing that he had a car accident. However, Gu Qing didn't understand why Gu Man seemed so scared and worried. When the principal of the No. 3 high school received Yuan Jisung's secretary's call, he walked out in a hurry. Seeing that his car was stopped in the parking lot, he was surprised and wondered why Gu Ning didn't tell him she was back. However, when he found out that it was Yuan Jisung's secretary who drove the car back for Gu Ning, he was shocked, but soon figured it out. Gu Ning and Su Anya were close friends, and Yuan Jisung was an old friend of Su Anya's father. It was understandable that Yuan Jisung sent his secretary to drive the car back for Gu Ning. A dozen minutes later, Gu Man and the others arrived at the hospital. When Gu Man entered the hospital room, she was heartbroken to see the man lying on the bed unconscious, and she couldn't help but burst into tears. It had been 18 years, but he was still as handsome as he had been even though he had aged during these years. Before Gu Man met Tang Yinfan, she had thought to herself thousands of times, wondering whether she would still love him or whether she would feel that he was very strange and their good old memories would be gone with the wind too. However, she felt her deep love for him painfully when she saw his face again, and she was sure that he was the only man she loved throughout this lifetime. Gu Qing didn't notice Gu Man's reaction nor Tang Yunfan, who was lying on the patient bed, but turned to Gu Ning and asked, "Ning, how's Mr. Tang now?" "He's still alive and the doctor said that he'll wake up in several hours," Gu Ning said. Gu Ning didn't tell them many details, because it was too hard to explain. Hearing that, Gu Qing was relieved, but Gu Man was still worried. "Aunt, let's go have a seat in the living room. My mother needs some private time," Gu Ning said to Gu Qing. It was a VIP patient room, so there was also a living room, kitchen, and bathroom inside apart from a patient room. Wang Sufan didn't know their relationship, so she didn't think further, but Gu Qing was struck dumb for a second because she didn't understand why Gu Man needed some private time with Tang Yunfan. Nevertheless, Gu Qing didn't ask why but walked out of the patient room with Wang Sufan. Once they were out, Gu Qing asked Gu Ning at once, "Ning, why does your mother need some private time in there?" "Well, I think that you better ask my mother later," Gu Ning said, because it was totally up to Gu Man how to handle it. Gu Qing opened her mouth, but closed it afterwards. Since Gu Ning said so, she better stay quiet now, but she was curious about the relationship between Gu Man and Mr. Tang. She wondered which one of them fell in love with the other first. Find PT Tez on n/vln.cm. Actually, Tang Yunfan had left a good impression on Gu Qing because he was handsome, kind and reliable. If Gu Man could be together with him, Gu Qing would feel happy for her. However, was Gu Ning willing to have a stepfather? Even if Gu Ning was willing to accept Tang Yunfan, would Tang Yunfan treat Gu Ning well? There were so many questions on Gu Qing's mind now, but she knew that it wasn't the right time to ask them. Gu Qing really cared a lot about Gu Man and Gu Ning. In the patient room, Gu Man stood still for a long while before she went to sit at the bedside. She kept staring at Tang Yunfan's face, trying to match his face with Ning. She was so nervous that she almost lost her breath. "Ning, it has been 18 years, Gu Man said gently with her voice trembling in tears. "I thought that I would never see you again. I thought I would only see your face again in my dreams. Do you know how painful it was when I heard that you had a car accident? I'm so worried about you. Please open your eyes and look at me." Gu Man talked to Tang Yunfan for a long time with tears falling from her face, but Tang Yunfan couldn't hear it, nor see it. Gu Man's voice wasn't loud, so Gu Qing and Wang Sufan didn't hear it clearly. They also had no idea that Gu Man was crying, because she didn't cry out loud either. All of a sudden, Gu Ning received Yu Mixi's message. Yu Mixi had been anxious ever since Gu Ning had disappeared. Watching Gu Ning driving away, Yu Mixi didn't dare call her, so she sent her a message. Yu Mixi wanted to tell Mu Ke and their other friends, but she decided to wait until Gu Ning replied to her. "Yu Mixi, Ning, what happened? Are you all right now? Please send a message back to me if you can. I'm worried about you." Gu Ning didn't realize that she hadn't told Yu Mixi anything until now, so she immediately sent a message back to her. "Gu Ning, I'm fine. Don't worry. I just got shocking news that my uncle had a car accident, so I was in a hurry to go to the hospital." Reading the message, Yu Mixi was finally relieved. She trusted Gu Ning. As long as Gu Ning said that she was fine, she would be fine. Their head teacher, Zhang Chihua, was also concerned about Gu Ning. Zhang Chihua found out that Gu Ning was absent in the second class, and she then got to know that Gu Ning had run out of the classroom in a hurry. After getting Gu Ning's reply, Yu Mixi told Zhang Chihua that Gu Ning was fine to calm her anxiety. "Car accident again?" Zhang Chihua said to herself. "Why are people by Gu Ning's side always caught in a car accident?" The minute that Gu Ning put her mobile phone down, Qian appeared. It was Guangming who told her that Gu Ning was in the hospital now. And Qian came here with a task. "Hi, Dr. In." Gu Qing greeted In Qian once she came inside. "Hi, In Qian," Gu Ning said. Without a doubt, it had to be In Guangming who told In Qian that she was here. "I heard that you're here, so I came here to have a look," In Qian said. "How's he now?" "He's still unconscious," Gu Ning said. "He'll be awake sooner or later. Don't worry," In Qian comforted. "Thanks," Gu Ning said. She also hoped that Tang Yunfan would wake up as soon as possible. Otherwise, not only Gu Man and Gu Ning, but the Tang family would also be worried. "Oh, Ning Ning, could you please do me a favor?" In Qian suddenly said with embarrassment. Didn't you save Su Anya's life when we attended her birthday party last time? My father has been curious about your special medicine ever since he heard the story. Could you please sell a pill to him?" She knew that the medicine was priceless, so she was willing to pay for it. "I'm willing to give a pill to your father, but I have to tell you the truth, it's impossible for others to know its formula, because it's my master's secret medicine, but she already passed away, so nobody else can figure its formula out, including me," Gu Ning said, half lying, half telling the truth. "What?" And Qian was surprised. "Well, you can have a try." Gu Ning gave In Qian a small porcelain bottle with a power crystal inside. It was impossible for them to figure out its formula, so Gu Ning was confident to set a high price for her special medicine. She also had no worries that others might abuse her medicine. Although In Qian believed Gu Ning, her father probably didn't and was determined to have a try. Therefore, In Qian took the bottle. "Thanks. Text your bank account to me and I'll transfer the money to you." "No need. Take it as a gift from me to your father," Gu Ning said airily. "What?" And Qian was surprised. The pill cost 1,000,000 yuan. However, Gu Ning didn't care. 1,000,000 yuan was a lot of money for the In family, but In Qian's father, who was a medical expert, was very curious about it. No, it costs 1,000,000 yuan, so I can't take it for free," In Qian said. Discover W stories on no/e/lbin.com. It's true that this pill is quite effective, but I got those pills without paying a cent myself. I don't rely on them to make money either, so you don't need to feel guilty at all. If you want to pay me back, you can let my uncle stay in the hospital for free instead, Gu Ning said. Well, and Qian still felt a little guilty. "All right, we're good friends after all," Gu Ning said, and pretended to be displeased. "If you reject me once more, I'll take it back." And Qian opened her mouth, but didn't say another word to reject Gu Ning. It was impossible for her to go back home with empty hands, because her father would be furious. "Thank you so much." And Qian said, "Please allow me to buy you a meal when you're free." "No problem." Gu Ning agreed. And Qian left afterwards. Gu Ning told Gu Qing and Wang Sufan that they could leave if they felt tired, but they were worried about Gu Man, so neither of them were willing to leave right now. After a long while, Gu Man was still in the patient room. It wasn't early, so Gu Ning told Gu Qing to buy some food for them. Wang Sufan followed Gu Qing outside. Gu Man alone stayed in the patient room for nearly an hour before she calmed herself down and went out. She seemed haggard with swollen, red eyes after crying in worry about Tang Yunfan. Gu Ning immediately poured a glass of water for Gu Man and secretly put a power crystal inside. With the help of the power crystal, Gu Man felt much better after, and her swollen, red eyes soon went back to normal. "Ning Ning, does his family know that he had a car accident?" Gu Man asked. "Not yet, but his secretary knows and is on his way here," Gu Ning said. Gu Man nodded and stopped asking. Instead, she sat aside with an absent look. "I asked Aunt to buy some food for us. Do you want to go back home after eating or stay here to keep him company?" Gu Ning asked. Actually, she already knew Gu Man's answer. I'll stay here, Gu Man said without hesitation. Tang Yunfan was still unconscious, and she couldn't sleep soundly if he was in danger. Before long, Gu Qing and Wang Sufan were back. After the meal, it was already past 6 p.m. Gu Ning then told Gu Qing and Wang Sufan to go back home and that she would stay here with Gu Man. Gu Qing was really curious about the relationship between Gu Man and the man, but she decided to wait to ask until Gu Man was home. Gu Man gave Wang Sufan the key to her home because she trusted Wang Sufan. Gu Qing wasn't able to see Tang Yunfan's face, or she wouldn't have been so calm, because Gu Ning closely resembled Tang Yunfan. When Gu Qing and Wang Sufan had just left, and Guangming walked inside. He came here to see whether Gu Ning needed help. Although he was eager to ask her about the medicine, he knew that it wasn't the right time, so he didn't mention it. Before Guangming went off duty, he repeatedly thanked Gu Ning for sending him the pill as a gift. Around 6:30 p.m., Tang Yunfan's phone rang, and the caller was Quan Mingkai. Gu Ning directly picked it up. "Miss Gu, how is Chairman Tang now?" Once Gu Ning answered the phone, Quan Mingkai asked her anxiously. "He's fine now but still unconscious," Gu Ning said. "I'm in City F now, and I'll be right there," Quan Mingkai said. "Great," Gu Ning said, then hung up. Half an hour later, Quan Mingkai arrived. "Nice to meet you, Miss Gu." Quan Mingkai greeted Gu Ning politely because he knew that she was Tang Yunfan's biological daughter. Only Tang Yunfan and he knew the secret in the Tang family right now, but he had respect for Gu Ning because of her real identity. In addition, he didn't know whether Gu Ning had found out about her own real identity yet, so he still called her Miss Gu. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Quan." Gu Ning greeted him. Quan Mingkai used to think that only Tang Yunfan and him knew the secret that Gu Ning was Tang Yunfan's biological daughter, but he changed his mind when he saw Gu Man. He had seen Gu Man's picture, so he recognized her face when she appeared in his sight. Since Gu Man was here, she must have met Tang Yunfan, and she had surely recognized him. Even though they hadn't met each other for 18 years, Tang Yunfan's appearance didn't change a lot. However, Quan Mingkai wasn't very certain about it, because 18 years wasn't a short time. However, if Gu Man hadn't recognized Tang Yunfan, she wouldn't have been so sad and worried. Anyway, although Quan Mingkai believed that Gu Man had already recognized Tang Yunfan, he decided to pretend that he didn't know, because the two hadn't accepted each other as family yet. "I bet you must be Miss Gu's mother, madam?" he asked politely. Gu Ning noticed Quan Mingkai's unusual reaction when he saw Gu Man, so she guessed that he knew Gu Man but pretended that he didn't. "Yes, this is my mother, Gu Man." Gu Ning introduced. "Mom, this is Mr. Quan." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," they greeted one another, then walked to the patient room together. Seeing Tang Yunfan unconscious, Quan Mingkai didn't know what to do. "Miss Gu, thank you so much. If it hadn't been for you, the situation could be worse," Quan Mingkai said to Gu Ning seriously. No matter whether Gu Ning knew that Tang Yunfan was her biological father, as Tang Yunfan's secretary, Quan Mingkai ought to thank her on behalf of his boss. "My pleasure," Gu Ning said. She didn't think that she had done Tang Yunfan a big favor, but believed that it was something that she had to do. Tang Yunfan was her biological father after all, and nothing was more important than saving her biological father's life. A dozen minutes later, Yuan Jisong arrived. When he met Quan Mingkai, he greeted Quan Mingkai with great respect. The Tang family was a super powerful family, whether in politics or in business in the country. They were as powerful as the four most influential families in the capital, so nobody dared to annoy them. Although Quan Mingkai was only Tang Yunfan's secretary, he was still a more important figure than the secretary of the municipal party committee from a third-tier city. "Secretary Yuan, Thank you for your help. Kwon Mingkai didn't show any arrogance and was very polite. After all, he was the one who had turned to Yuan Jisung for help. However, to his surprise, Gu Ning had appeared at the accident scene. It's my pleasure to help. And actually Girl Gu did most of it, Yuan Jisung told the truth. It was a serious car accident, and the driver was badly injured, let alone Tang Yunfan who had sat in the back. The rear part of the car had been squeezed out of shape, and half of Tang Yunfan's body was tightly pressed by the car. It was impossible that he was just slightly injured. However, when Tang Yunfan was sent to the hospital, all he had were minor injuries. Others thought that it must be a miracle, but Yuan Jisung believed that it had to be because of Gu Ning's help. Secretary Yuan, both you and Miss Gu have helped us a lot. Thank you so much. Kwon Mingkai thanked them again. Yuan Jisung was very curious about the injured man's identity. Why did Kwon Mingkai come to visit him in person? Yuan Jisung didn't know the answer, but he understood that the injured man had to be an important figure. Normally, Tang Yunfan should have woken up after 2 hours. However, 4 hours had passed, and he was still unconscious. Everyone was concerned about him, but none of them could do anything about it. All they could do now was wait. Since Kwon Mingkai was here, Gu Ning and Gu Man went back home later. Gu Man and Tang Yunfan hadn't accepted each other as family yet, so it was inappropriate for Gu Man to stay there for the night. Before they left, Gu Ning reminded Kwon Mingkai to call her if Tang Yunfan woke up no matter how late it was. Mom, don't worry. He'll be fine. Seeing Gu Man so sad, Gu Ning comforted her. In order to calm Gu Ning's concern, Gu Man forced a smile and said, "Sure, he'll be fine." Gu Ning understood that Gu Man was in a terrible mood, but she could do nothing about it. Precisely because Gu Man was still in love with him, she felt very hurt when he was in danger. When they were finally home, it was only 9 p.m. Gu Qing and Wang Sufan were sitting in the living room, waiting for Gu Man. "Man, is Mr. Tang awake?" Once Gu Man was back, Gu Qing asked with concern. "Not yet," Gu Man replied. "Man," Gu Qing hesitated, but still asked, "Has anything happened between you and Mr. Tang?" She was Gu Man's older sister and she was worried about Gu Man. Of course, if Gu Man wasn't willing to tell her, she wouldn't continue to ask. Given all the things that had happened, Gu Man decided to tell Gu Qing the truth. "Well, he is Ning Ning's biological father." "What?" Hearing that, Gu Qing abruptly stood up from the sofa in great shock. "Mr. Tang is Ning Ning's biological father? Isn't he dead already?" Gu Qing blurted it out without a second thought, and immediately regretted it when she said it aloud. Tang Yunfan was still unconscious after all, and it wasn't right to say that now. Wang Sufan was Gu Man's good friend, so she knew about Gu Man's history, and also felt astonished after hearing the news. "Then why hasn't he found or visited you at all throughout the past 18 years? Why did he suddenly appear now?" Gu Qing was slightly blaming Tang Yunfan. "He had a car accident back then and lost the memory of the year when we were together, so he never found or visited me. A while ago, he met Ning Ning, and Ning Ning got his attention because Ning Ning closely resembles him. After investigation, he's sure that Ning Ning is his biological daughter. However, he still failed to get his memory back," Gu Man said and sounded very sad. Hearing that, Gu Qing stopped blaming Tang Yunfan. "So what's your plan now?" Gu Qing asked. "Is he still single, or is he married?" If he was married, Gu Man couldn't be together with him anymore, but if he was still single, there was a chance that they could be together again. He stayed single the entire time. "Although he lost the memory of the year when he was with my mother, he still had a vague image of my mother in his mind, and couldn't accept another woman," Gu Ning said. Ever since he found out that my mother and I are his family, he has been trying to take responsibility as a husband and father. He came to City F this time precisely for the purpose of meeting my mother face to face. Unexpectedly, he was caught in a car accident again on his way after leaving the airport. Twists of fate, Wang Sufan said. Indeed, 18 years ago, a car accident had set them apart and made Gu Man believe that he was already dead. And a car accident stopped them from meeting each other again 18 years later. How about you? Are you willing to be together with him again? Gu Qing asked. I have no idea. Gu Man didn't have a clear mind now. Although she still loved Tang Yunfan, they had been apart for 18 years after all, and it was unavoidable that they felt a little strange towards one another. Besides, he couldn't remember her now, and it was hard to tell what would happen in the future. Everything was unpredictable now. Since Gu Man hadn't made up her mind yet, Gu Qing stopped asking. However, if Gu Man hesitated, it proved that she was still in love with Tang Yunfan. Upon thinking that Gu Man had raised her child alone for the past 18 years, Gu Qing's heart ached for her younger sister. She had also believed that Gu Man should marry again, but Gu Man refused to marry again to protect Gu Ning. A stepfather wasn't a biological father after all, and Gu Man was worried that her daughter wouldn't be treated with real care. Nevertheless, things were different now. Ning Ning, what do you think? Gu Qing asked Gu Ning. Gu Ning understood Gu Qing's concern about Gu Man. She smiled and said, "If my mother is willing to marry again, I will, of course, be supportive. I have always hoped that my mother could find a reliable man to spend the rest of her life happily. I'm going to study in the capital soon after all, and I won't have much time to keep my mother company. I don't want her to be lonely." Hearing that, Gu Qing was relieved and felt comforted because Gu Ning was a considerate daughter. When they were free, Gu Ning called Zhang Chihua and asked for another day off. That night, Gu Man didn't have any sleep but was thinking about Tang Yunfan the entire time. At the same time, Gu Ning didn't receive the news that Tang Yunfan woke up either, which was above and also below her expectations. Although she had the strange feeling that Tang Yunfan wouldn't wake up easily, she didn't know why, because she had already done her best to cure him. Gu Ning was worried about him. What they didn't know was that Tang Yunfan actually fell into a deep dream in which he went back to a certain day 19 years ago. It was a summer vacation. Tang Yunfan along with his two friends came to City D for sightseeing. However, to his astonishment, his two friends had a scheme to kill him here and he was badly injured during the fight. He had no idea how long he had fled, and finally fell down on the ground when he was out of strength. When he woke up again, he was in a hospital with a beautiful young woman by his side. In addition, he didn't remember anything, so he followed the beautiful young woman all the time because he knew that she had saved his life and wouldn't hurt him. The next day, Gu Man looked extremely haggard with dark circles under her eyes. It was quite obvious that she had stayed up all night. Gu Ning poured a glass of water for her as usual and secretly put a power crystal inside. After drinking the water, Gu Man went back to normal. Gu Ning didn't go to school today, but went to the hospital with Gu Man. Tang Yunfan was still unconscious since yesterday afternoon, so Quan Mingkai was deeply concerned. It's been a long time, but he's still unconscious. It's very weird, because the doctor said that his body is fine now, Quan Mingkai said with concern when Gu Ning and Gu Man arrived. Exactly, because Tang Yunfan was still unconscious even though his body was fine already, everyone was worried about him. If they couldn't figure out the reason, they had no idea how to wake him up. Facing the problem, Gu Ning really didn't know what to do either. "Let's wait for another day," Gu Ning said. That was all they could do now. Nevertheless, another day passed, but Tang Yunfan still didn't wake up and Quan Mingkai couldn't tolerate it anymore. "Miss Gu, I'm sorry. I think it's time to tell the Tang family." They hadn't told the Tang family before because they didn't want them to be worried and thought that Tang Yunfan would wake up soon. However, it had been 2 days but there was still no sign that he was going to wake up, so Quan Mingkai thought that it was time to tell the Tang family right now. If he still kept it a secret, he couldn't bear the result if anything terrible happened to Tang Yunfan again. Gu Ning thought for a while then agreed. Well, of course, you should call them now but please don't tell Grandpa Tang right now. He's too old to accept such terrible news. I don't want him to be in danger too. Quan Mingkai agreed, so he directly called Tang Yunhang. When Tang Yunhang heard the news, he was shocked and immediately sent a private jet to pick Tang Yunfan up. He didn't send a helicopter because it was slower than a private jet. That being the case, they had to get to the airport in 2.5 hours. Since they hadn't accepted each other as family yet, Gu Ning and Gu Man could only see Tang Yunfan being taken away before their own eyes. Before Tang Yunfan was moved back to City B, Gu Ning took out a bottle with 20 power crystals inside and gave it to Quan Mingkai. She told Quan Mingkai to help Tang Yunfan take a pill every 3 days if Tang Yunfan still wouldn't wake up. The pill would melt once it was put in his mouth, so it wouldn't cause any problems even if Tang Yunfan was still unconscious. Gu Ning also reminded Quan Mingkai to call her if anything bad happened to Tang Yunfan and she would come to him as fast as she could. Moreover, if Tang Haifeng felt uncomfortable after hearing the news about Tang Yunfan, he could take a pill too. Quan Mingkai, of course, trusted Gu Ning, and he took the bottle right away. Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb/i/n.co/m. Gu Ning turned to Nguangming for an ambulance to send Tang Yunfan to the airport. Nguangming then told Yuan Jisong that Tang Yunfan was being moved back to City B now, so Yuan Jisong came to the hospital in a hurry. When Yuan Jisong arrived, Quan Mingkai's group hadn't left yet, because the private jet would only land at the airport after 2.5 hours, so they had decided to wait at the hospital for now. Mr. Quan, I heard that you're going back to City B? Yuan Jisong asked. Yes. He's still unconscious and it'll be more convenient in City B, Quan Mingkai said. He didn't expose Tang Yunfan's real identity. 2 hours later, Gu Ning and Gu Man along with Quan Mingkai sent Tang Yunfan to the airport in an ambulance arranged by the hospital. Along the way, Gu Man's sight fell on Tang Yunfan all the time. She felt so sad and hurt, but had to swallow her feelings because she didn't want others to find out. However, Gu Ning and Quan Mingkai were still able to notice her unusual reactions. Gu Ning didn't say anything because she could do nothing about it. Quan Mingkai didn't say a word either. Although he had deep sympathy for Gu Man, he was an outsider after all. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the airport. It was all arranged well, so the ambulance went directly through the VIP passage heading to where the private jet landed. The private jet had already landed a few minutes ago, so there were 4 people waiting for them when they arrived. Gu Man didn't know that Tang Yunfan was being moved back to City B by a private jet, so she was very surprised when she saw it. He must be an important figure to use a private jet. Gu Man thought to herself. No matter what, Tang Yunfan left an unforgettable impression on her now. The ambulance stopped in front of the private jet. Once the car door was open, some people immediately walked forward and helped them push Tang Yunfan into the private jet. Before the private jet took off, Quan Mingkai said to Gu Ning and Gu Man, "Thank you so much for your kindness. Keep in touch." "Of course," Gu Ning said. After that, Quan Mingkai turned around, getting aboard. Gu Ning and Gu Man didn't walk away until the private jet disappeared from their sight. However, when they went back to the ambulance, Gu Man suddenly collapsed to the ground. Luckily, Gu Ning was by her side and supported her on time. "Mom!" Gu Ning was a little scared and instantly put her power into Gu Man's body. "Miss Gu, shall we take your mother back to the hospital for a check? The driver asked with concern. Thanks. I'm fine. I'm just a little tired. Let's go back home now. Gu Man forced a smile. Thank you so much, but please send us to Fanghua Luxury Mansion, Gu Ning said. As long as she was there, Gu Man would be fine. No problem. Since they said so, the driver didn't insist. With the help of Gu Ning's magical power, Gu Man's body was fine, but she was still in a bad mood. When they got home, it was already 5 p.m. and Wang Sufan was cooking for them. Hi, welcome home. Wang Sufan walked out of the kitchen when she heard the sound of the door opening. I found a new apartment today and I'll move in tonight. Thank you so much for letting me stay with you these past 2 days. You're moving into a new apartment tonight? Gu Man was surprised. Well, you don't need to rush, and we're more than willing to help you. Wang Sufan understood that Gu Man was always kind and generous, but she still preferred to rely on herself. Oh, where is your new apartment? Gu Man asked. Not far from the beauty salon, Wang Sufan said. Is it safe there? Gu Man asked. Yes. Only tenants have keys, Wang Sufan said. Sounds great. Gu Man said. Follow the latest novels n/velbin.com. When they were home, Gu Ning was finally free to call Yuan Jisong and asked him about the truck driver. Since it was totally an accident, we settled the case according to the law and I already told Mr. Quan the details, Yuan Jisong said. Great. Gu Ning said. When they had dinner later, they invited Gu Qing's family to join them. Once Gu Qing walked in, she asked Gu Man, how's Mr. Tang right now? Gu Qing wasn't aware that Tang Yinfan had already been moved back to City B. He's still unconscious, and his family already moved him back to City B this afternoon, Gu Man said, and she seemed upset. What? He was moved back to City B? Gu Qing was surprised and worried. If Tang Yinfan was moved back to City B, what would Gu Man do now? He's still unconscious and there is nothing I can do. Gu Man was a little fretful. It did not matter whether she could be with Tang Yinfan, she just hoped that he would wake up and be safe. Gu Qing then realized that Tang Yinfan's health was the most important thing now. Gu Man wasn't in a good mood, and lost her appetite, so she didn't eat much during dinner. After the meal, Gu Ning drove Wang Sufan to her newly rented apartment, while Gu Qing stayed to comfort Gu Man. In the Tang family's house, City B. In the afternoon, Tang Yunheng called Tang Yinrong and her husband and told them to come to the Tang family's house tonight, but didn't tell them any details. Therefore, around 6 p.m. Tang Yinrong and her husband arrived at the Tang family's house. Except for Tang Yinheng, no one else knew what had happened, but Tang Yinheng refused to tell them details until Tang Yinfan was home, so they all had to wait with patience. After dinner, they were chatting in the living room watching TV shows. Tang Yinheng told them that Tang Yinfan would be home around 8 p.m. and they were all waiting. Around 7:30 p.m., the Tang family's private jet landed at the airport of City B. A group of people got out of the plane and directly got in an MPV heading to the Tang family's house. The Tang family had their own private doctors who were all internationally well-known experts, and there was also a medical room equipped with a full set of medical devices in the Tang family's house. Therefore, they didn't need to go to the hospital but went straight back to the Tang family's house. In addition, Tang Yinfan was a very important figure. If he was admitted in the hospital, the news that he was unconscious would soon spread abroad, which was a good chance for his enemies to attack him. The Tang family was the #1 family in City B and not many people dared to annoy them, but they also had many enemies in politics and business, so they had to keep it a secret that Tang Yinfan was unconscious. Tang Yinfan was the only person in the Tang family who was able to run such a large family business now because Tang Haifeng was too old, while Tang Jiayong was too young. Besides, Tang Jiayang was studying abroad. Even if he came back home to take over the family business under emergency, he didn't have much experience nor the ability to handle the dangerous situation. In that case, the Tang family had to do their best to solve the crisis. At the same time, Tang Yunfan's condition was very unusual because his body was fine but he was still unconscious. Even if he was admitted to the hospital, the result would be the same. If Tang Yunfan was in a bad condition, they would of course send him to the hospital. Around 8 p.m., Tang Yunfan was finally home but he was moved inside in a stretcher, which shocked everyone in the Tang family. Especially Master Tang, who almost fell when he saw the scene. Luckily, the housekeeper supported him on time, but he still breathed hard and felt utterly uncomfortable. Seeing that, Quan Mingkai immediately took out a power crystal, helping Tang Haifeng take it, and Tang Haifeng soon got better. Although Quan Mingkai trusted Gu Ning, he had never seen the unbelievable effect of the pill with his own eyes before, so he was quite surprised when Tang Haifeng soon got better after taking the pill. What has happened? Chao Ruihua asked the minute he recovered from the shock. Let's go to the medical room first, Tang Yunhang said, then told them to move Tang Yunfan to the medical room right away where doctors were already waiting for them. Afterwards, they all quickly walked to the medical room. When they arrived, they carefully put Tang Yunfan on the patient bed, and the doctors administered an examination at once. Tang Haifeng couldn't wait and asked Quan Mingkai in anxiety, "Mingkai, what happened?" Lord Tang had a car accident, but all he has on his body now are minor injuries, but somehow he's still unconscious, Quan Mingkai said. Hearing that, everyone was astonished. A car accident? Where and when? Why didn't you tell us before? Tang Haifeng questioned in anger and worry. Although Tang Haifeng was an old man now, he was still a well-respected, successful businessman, so Quan Mingkai felt extremely stressed. Well, Lord Tang went to City F yesterday and was in a car accident around 3 p.m. while he was leaving the airport. After the medical check, Lord Tang only had minor injuries and his body was in a normal condition, so I didn't inform the Tang family right away, because I thought that Lord Tang would be awake soon. However, Lord Tang has been unconscious for 2 days, so I called Lord Yunhang, Quan Mingkai explained. City F? Why did Yunfan go to City F? We don't have any businesses in City F after all, Tang Yunhang asked with confusion. Well, Quan Mingkai didn't know how to explain it. At that moment, the doctor finished the medical check. Except for some minor injuries, Lord Tang is fine. I can't find the reason why he's still unconscious either. Full 0W current novels on n/o/v/3l/b in.co/m. His body was in good condition, but he was still unconscious, which wasn't good news because nobody knew how to cure him if they couldn't find the reason. Well, why don't we call Girl Gu now? Tang Haifeng suddenly thought of Gu Ning. He took out his phone and was about to call Gu Ning. Gu Ning must know how to wake Yunfan up. He thought to himself. Tang Haifeng placed his complete trust in Gu Ning. He believed that if Gu Ning was able to cure his heart disease, it would be easy for her to cure Tang Yunfan. However, when he just took out his phone, Quan Mingkai interrupted him. Master Tang, Miss Gu has already checked Lord Tang's body, but she doesn't know the reason either. What? Girl Gu has already checked Yunfan's body? Everyone was surprised, but nobody asked Quan Mingkai how Gu Ning met Tang Yunfan, because they were all shocked by the news that even Gu Ning didn't know the reason why Tang Yunfan was still unconscious. If Girl Gu doesn't know the reason, who else could find it? Tang Haifeng was extremely disappointed and almost fell on the ground. Luckily, the housekeeper supported him on time. In City F. On the way, Gu Ning went back after she sent Wang Sufan home. The traffic was a little heavy on the road, so she looked around to kill time. All of a sudden, she noticed that there were a lot of people crowded at the roadside. It seemed that two women were fighting amid the crowd. Gu Ning wasn't interested in watching fights, but she had a burning curiosity now after she recognized the two women who were in the fight. They were precisely Lin Lijuan and Gu Qingxiang's secretary, Lu Yue. Gu Qingxiang was also there. Seeing that, Gu Ning immediately stopped the car by the roadside and watched the drama from the car. Gu Ning stopped near, so she was able to hear their conversations clearly. Lu Yue was a slim, young girl, and she obviously couldn't beat Lin Lijuan in a fight. Moreover, Lin Lijuan had Jin Lanxin as her helper, while Gu Qingxiang was stopped by a middle-aged man, so he wasn't able to help Lu Yue. In that case, Lin Lijuan and Jin Lanxin had already slapped Lu Yue many times. As a result, Lu Yue's face was obviously swollen, and her hair, as well as her clothes, were in a mess. Lin Lijuan was also injured with several scratches on her face during the fight with Lu Yue. However, she didn't feel the pain at all right now, because she was in a rage. The middle-aged man who stopped Gu Qingxiang was Lin Lijuan's older brother, Lin Dekhang. Without a doubt, Lin Lijuan was fully prepared for today's fight. In fact, Lin Lijuan had prepared well for it. Jin Lanxin was the one who discovered the adultery. Her younger sister lived in the same living area as Lu Yue, and they coincidentally lived in the same building. Last night, when Jin Lanxin left her younger sister's place and went to the parking lot, she saw Gu Qingxiang's car stopped right next to hers. There was a woman in Gu Qingxiang's car, and the woman was precisely Lu Yue. Although Jin Lanxin wasn't sure about their relationship, she had the instinct that it couldn't be simple. Jin Lanxin was right. Gu Qingxiang and Lu Yue didn't get out of the car at once, but kissed each other inside. Seeing the scene, Jin Lanxin was shocked and took a video of them without hesitation. She knew that men loved adultery, but they were very bold to do that right in the car in a public parking lot. Jin Lanxin hated adultery very much. She didn't even trust her own husband's loyalty, but she hadn't gotten any evidence yet, so she remained quiet for now. However, since she had already witnessed the scene, she would definitely tell Lin Lijuan, because she was Lin Lijuan's good friend. Lu Yue had stayed in the car with Gu Qingxiang for half an hour, then she got out of the car, walking upstairs. Jin Lanxin didn't call Lin Lijuan until the next day, because she was worried that Lin Lijuan would lose control of herself and wouldn't get any benefit from this mess. Therefore, Jin Lanxin met Lin Lijuan in her place the next day before she told Lin Lijuan everything. Lin Lijuan had a quick temper. Once she heard it, she was so mad that she wanted to fight with Gu Qingxiang right away in his company, but she was stopped by Jin Lanxin because it wouldn't do her any good. On Jin Lanxin's advice, Lin Lijuan told her older brother, Lin Dekhang, to help her. Lin Dekhang of course was more than willing to do that. Gu Xiaoxiao had just been put into jail, and he had just lent Gu Xinxiang 2 million yuan to help Gu Qingxiang's company stay afloat, so he couldn't tolerate it that Gu Qingxiang humiliated his family like that. Accordingly, this afternoon, the group of them went to Gu Qingxiang's company together. Once Gu Qingxiang and Lu Yue walked out, they ran ahead swearing at them. They weren't polite people at all, but rude and selfish. Jin Lanxin caught Lu Yue at once so that Lin Lijuan could swear at her and slap her face as much as Lin Lijuan liked. "You're such a bitch. How dare you seduce my husband? How shameless you are that you gave him a blowjob right in the car." Jin Lanxin didn't feel embarrassed at all but said it plainly. No one liked a mistress, so nobody had sympathy for Lu Yue. Especially when they heard that Lu Yue had given him the blowjob right in a car, they felt more disgusted. "She's so shameless. Only a shameless woman is willing to be a married man's mistress." "Exactly. The woman is the man's secretary." "Really? Wow, it's office adultery." Hearing onlookers' discussion, Lin Lijuan was extremely furious. She couldn't help thinking of the picture when Lu Yue had sex with her husband right in the office, which motivated her to slap Lu Yue more heavily. Don't you enjoy giving blowjobs? How many men have you done that for? Have you had enough of it? If not, I can help you find a dozen men so that you can lick their sexual organs as much as you want. Lin Lijuan, enough. Although Gu Qingxiang panicked a lot when the adultery was exposed, he was afraid that Lin Lijuan would attract more attention, so he opened his mouth to stop her. What? You don't want to see your lover being slapped in public? Ha, it's not up to you right now. Lin Lijuan almost went crazy and slapped Lu Yue with full strength. In the past, Gu Qingxiang always used the excuse that he was tired to reject her every time she proposed to have sex. They only had sex once a week or 2 weeks, and Gu Qingxiang even seemed unwilling to do so. She used to think that he had to be tired because of work and she should be considerate. However, to her astonishment, he was tired because he already had enough with the other woman. Gu Qingxiang had no idea what to do now. Although Lu Yue was his lover, he was just playing around, and it was impossible that he would divorce Lin Lijuan. Undoubtedly, men tend to obey their sexual impulses, and they were selfish too. Gu Qingxiang was the one who had cheated on his partner and acted against the marriage law, but he still thought that it was acceptable because he was just playing around and wouldn't divorce Lin Lijuan. Marriage? In Gu Qingxiang's eyes, Lin Lijuan only cared about her title as Mrs. Gu. However, she actually cared about his loyalty the most. Times were different now, and it was completely unacceptable to cheat on one's partner in marriage. Gu Qingxiang, how can you treat us like this? Your daughter was just put in jail and your company is amid crises now. I even lent you money to help you keep your company afloat. And now you have a mistress? How can you be so shameless? Lin Dekhang criticized Gu Qingxiang. Although he wasn't loyal to his partner in marriage either, he had never kept a woman as a mistress. In addition, what Gu Qingxiang had done broke Lin Lijuan's heart, especially after what had happened to their daughter, Gu Xiaoxiao. It was also a humiliation to the Lin family, so Lin Dekhang was furious too. Gu Qingxiang didn't say another word, but remained silent. He knew that it was his fault, but didn't think that it was a big deal. At the same time, he also understood that he better stay quiet now. Hearing what Lin Dekhang had just said, those onlookers started to criticize Gu Qingxiang. Jesus! The man is so shameless. He's such a terrible man. I support his wife to undress the mistress. All of a sudden, someone said that among the group of onlookers. Lin Lijuan, on the other hand, thought that it was a good idea to humiliate Lu Yue, so she went to undress Lu Yue at once. However, it was winter and it wasn't easy to take off winter clothes. Before Lin Lijuan succeeded, the police arrived and separated them. Lu Yue was badly injured, so the police called an ambulance and sent her to the hospital, while Lin Lijuan, Jin Lanqin and Gu Qingxiang were taken to the police station. Gu Ning didn't know what would happen to them next, and she wasn't interested either. What Gu Qingxiang had done behind Lin Lijuan's back was finally exposed, but it was too late when Lin Lijuan found it out. When Gu Ning got home, Gu Qing was chatting with Gu Man in the living room, so Gu Ning told them about what had happened between Gu Qingxiang and Lin Lijuan. Both Gu Qing and Gu Man were quite surprised. Although they didn't get along with Lin Lijuan, and even hated her very much, they still had sympathy for her, because what Gu Qingxiang had done was totally unacceptable. Anyway, since they had decided to keep a distance away from Gu Xingxiang's family, they wouldn't do anything but just took it as gossip. Mom, Aunt, why don't we go to City G tomorrow? Let's go to see the store and factory of jade beauty jewelry. And we can visit Uncle Qin Young too. We haven't ever visited them at their place before, Gu Ning said. Although tomorrow was Friday, Gu Ning had already asked for a leave, so she didn't need to attend classes. It had also been a long while since she had checked the store and factory of jade beauty jewelry. Most importantly, she wanted to cheer Gu Man up. Gu Man wasn't in a good mood, but she was interested in Gu Ning's proposal. She had nothing else to deal with now, and it wasn't a bad idea to have a journey. Gu Qing was also excited, so both of them agreed. Gu Ning then booked plane tickets flying to City G at 8 a.m. tomorrow. They would arrive in City G after an hour of flying. When Gu Qing went back to her home, she searched her closet for beautiful clothes. They would stay in City G for only 2 days, so there was no need to pack many clothes, but she still decided to wear her most beautiful dresses. "What are you doing now?" Jiang Su asked with curiosity. "Ningning is taking Man and me to City G tomorrow. We'll have a tour at the store and factory of jade beauty jewelry before we go to visit Qinyang," Gu Qing said. Actually, she understood that Gu Ning did it for the purpose of cheering Gu Man up. Discover new chapters at novelby.co. Sounds great, Jiang Su said. "Oh, how is Gu Man now?" "She seems worried," Jiang Su added. Gu Qing sighed, then told Jiang Su everything. Jiang Su was very surprised after hearing the story. To his astonishment, Gu Ning's biological father was still alive. "Wow, what twists of fate," Jiang Su said. He had deep sympathy for Gu Man because he also knew that Gu Man had lived a tough life during the past 18 years. She hadn't lived a good life for a long time, and then Gu Ning's biological father suddenly appeared. Indeed. Gu Qing sighed, and her heart ached for her younger sister, Gu Man. What do Gu Man and Ningning think about it? Jiang Su asked. Gu Man still loves the man and Ningning is supportive, but Mr. Tang is still unconscious now. We have to wait until he's awake, Gu Qing said. When it was almost 11 p.m., Gu Ning received Ling Xiaoting's call. He was about to have a few days off and he wanted to meet her. In fact, Ling Xiaoting planned to surprise Gu Ning, but he was afraid that she would be absent from City F like what had happened the last time, so he called her beforehand this time. Hearing that Ling Xiaoting would be free and wanted to meet her in a couple of days, Gu Ning would normally be happy, but now she was upset. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'm going to City G tomorrow along with my mother and aunt." Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting remained silent and felt upset too. He wanted to call her as early as he could, but he had just finished his task. "I miss you so much, and I ache to see you," Ling Xiaoting said. He didn't have many days off during a year after all. Gu Ning could feel his strong grievance through the phone and she was amused, but she immediately thought of a good idea. "Why don't you go to City G? If you don't mind, you can be our private chauffeur in the following 2 days. Wherever we go, you can drive us there." "No problem," Ling Xiaoting agreed with alacrity. He, of course, wouldn't mind being their chauffeur. Although Gu Ning's mother and aunt would be there too and he couldn't kiss or touch her as he wanted, he could still stay near her. However, Ling Xiaoting wasn't satisfied, so he asked with anticipation, "Where will you be staying at night?" It was a normal question, but Gu Ning understood Ling Xiaoting's real intention. Her heart beat fast and her cheeks flushed. My mother and my aunt can stay in my apartment and I can stay in a hotel." Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting was excited. "Very well. Then I'll stay in the hotel with you." Hearing that, a picture of them having sex at night appeared in Gu Ning's mind, and her heart beat faster, but she pretended to be calm. "I didn't say that I'm going to sleep with you. Baby, you know you want to." He laughed and flirted with her, which made Gu Ning's heart skip a beat. He was so sexy and charming that even his voice could easily turn her on. Ling Xiaoting was just used to being cold. If he smiled more, far more women would be attracted to him. Nonetheless, Gu Ning didn't want it to happen, so she would rather see Ling Xiaoting being cold to everyone except her than see him smiling all day. "If you don't sleep with me, then who will you sleep with?" Ling Xiaoting teased. Gu Ning was surprised and took a long breath in. Since when has Ling Xiaoting become so good at flirting? She thought to herself, but she had to admit that she kind of liked it. I'll sleep alone, Gu Ning said on purpose. Won't you feel lonely if you sleep all alone for a long night? Ling Xiaoting smiled lightly, but his voice was soaked with sexual desire. Gu Ning was struck dumb for a second. If she hadn't recognized Ling Xiaoting's voice, she would have taken him as another man. Xiaoting? She still called him with doubt. Yes, what's wrong? Ling Xiaoting asked. He thought that Gu Ning had something serious to talk to him about, so his voice went back to normal. T from N, 0/V/LBN/.co/M. Nothing. I just feel like you've changed a lot, Gu Ning said. Ling Xiaoting was struck dumb for a second now, because he didn't notice any changes in himself. He just felt so comfortable and at ease when he got along with Gu Ning. My love for you will never change, Ling Xiaoting said gently. Gu Ning felt touched and flushed a little. Ling Xiaoting understood that Gu Ning was shy, so he stopped flirting with her. Besides, he could directly express his love to her with actions tomorrow night. When will you leave for City G tomorrow? Ling Xiaoting asked. 8 a.m., Gu Ning said. Great, I'll pick you up at the airport by then, Ling Xiaoting said. What? Gu Ning was surprised. It takes 3 hours of flying from the capital to City G. If you're going to pick us up at the airport, you can't have a good rest. Gu Ning didn't want Ling Xiaoting to be so tired because he had just finished his task. I want to meet you as soon as possible, and I can rest in the plane, Ling Xiaoting said. He couldn't wait a second longer to meet Gu Ning. All right. Since Ling Xiaoting said so, Gu Ning agreed because she also ached to see him. The two hung up later after talking for a short while. That night, Gu Man still couldn't fall asleep, but she was able to stay cheerful after drinking the water Gu Ning poured for her the next day. It was the first time that Gu Man and Gu Qing had taken a plane, so both of them were quite nervous. Gu Ning bought the plane tickets for the first class so they could use the VIP lounge, but Gu Man and Gu Qing were curious about the airport terminals, so they waited there instead. It was still a dozen minutes away from the departure time, and they were sitting on the chairs outside of the gate. Man, are you nervous? I'm really nervous now. Gu Qing asked Gu Man, and her voice was trembling. Me too. Gu Man said. Will the plane be stable if it flies so fast? And will it fall if it flies so high? Gu Qing asked with anxiety. Gee, two bumpkins. Hearing the talk between Gu Qing and Gu Man, a woman who sat nearby laughed at them. Gu Qing and Gu Man felt a little embarrassed, while Gu Ning was slightly annoyed. Even if Gu Qing and Gu Man were bumpkins, Gu Ning wouldn't tolerate it if anyone else dared make fun of them. However, she didn't want to make a mountain out of a molehill just because of that, so she stayed quiet for now. If the woman dared to do it again, she wouldn't be quiet anymore. Since the woman laughed at them, Gu Qing and Gu Man shut their mouths at once. Mom, Aunt, it's not a big deal, and it's totally understandable that you're nervous when you are flying for the first time, Gu Ning said to comfort them. Gu Qing and Gu Man gave her a smile to show that they didn't mind. Nevertheless, the woman opened her mouth again, a bunch of bumpkins. Shut up! Gu Ning criticized her coldly, turning to stare at the woman. Her look was very sharp, and the woman felt frightened. Jesus! This young girl is so frightening. The woman thought to herself, then turned her gaze away from Gu Ning. Ning Ning, it's fine. Seeing that Gu Ning was getting mad, Gu Man and Gu Qing comforted her in a hurry. They disliked the woman's behavior too, but didn't want to make a scene here. Since the woman was scared of her, Gu Ning didn't say another word. When it was the departure time, everyone started to get aboard. The woman who had made fun of Gu Qing and Gu Man got on the plane along with them. After they were in the plane, the woman flushed with embarrassment when she saw that Gu Man and them sat in the first class. Most of the people who could afford the first class were the rich, but she had called them a bunch of bumpkins just then. The plane slid along the runway. Gu Qing and Gu Man clasped each other's hands nervously. When the plane finally took off into the sky, they had a sense of weightlessness, but it was acceptable. By the time that the plane flew steadily in the air, Gu Qing and Gu Man were already used to it. Ling Xiaoting arrived at the airport of City G at 8:30 a.m. He told Ai Weichen to prepare a car for him beforehand, but to his surprise, Ai Weichen drove the car here in person. "Why did you drive here in person?" Ling Xiaoting asked with doubt, because Ai Weichen would normally send his secretary to drive the car here. Ai Weichen sighed heavily and said in a resigned tone, "I used it as an excuse to avoid a blind date." Blind dates were really annoying. He then looked to Ling Xiaoting and joked, "Your name is really useful. You're 28 now and it's time to get married," Ling Xiaoting said. In the past, Ling Xiaoting never talked about marriage, but now he was eagerly anticipating marrying Gu Ning. Unfortunately, Gu Ning was too young. "My older brother is 30 now, but he's not married yet. I don't need to rush," Ai Weichen said airily, but he seemed sad and lonely. In fact, he also wanted to get married, but the woman he wanted to marry disliked him, and he couldn't accept someone else, so he had to stay single. Just like how the woman liked his older brother, but his older brother disliked her. Ling Xiaoting didn't say another word, because he understood that Ai Weichen was in a difficult situation, and it was his own personal affair. Ai Weichen also didn't continue this topic, because it was painful for him to speak about. "Oh, my older brother is home these days. If you have some free time, we can have a gathering. It has been a long time that we haven't drunk together." "Sure. I'll call you if I'm free," Ling Xiaoting said. After that, Ai Weichen left. What Ai Weichen didn't know was that his older brother, Ai Weishun, actually spent a lot more time with Ling Xiaoting than he did. Ai Weichen only knew that Ai Weishun was one of Ling Xiaoting's comrades in the army, but he didn't know that Ai Weishun was also a member of the Red Flame and followed Ling Xiaoting's lead. Members in the Red Flame had to keep their identity a secret, so even their families had no idea about it. Around 9 a.m., the plane landed at the airport of City G. Once Gu Ning turned her phone on, she saw Ling Xiaoting's message. He said that he was waiting for them at the arrival hall. Gu Ning already told Gu Qing and Gu Man that she hired a private chauffeur to drive the car for them during the 2 days in City G. Gu Man and Gu Qing didn't think that it was a bad idea, but Gu Ning still worried, because Ling Xiaoting was too handsome to be just a chauffeur. Moreover, Ling Xiaoting was so cold and it could upset Gu Qing and Gu Man. Gu Ning didn't want her family to have a bad impression of him. After thinking for a while, she said to Gu Qing and Gu Man, "Mom, Aunt, the private chauffeur is actually my friend. He's a little cold and doesn't like to smile or talk much. Please don't mind him." "Of course not," Gu Man and Gu Qing said. In the arrival hall, Ling Xiaoting was standing there waiting for Gu Ning and her family. Wherever he went, he was always in the limelight, but he didn't care about others' glances because all he cared about now was Gu Ning's presence. Gu Ning and her family didn't check in any baggage, so they walked out quickly. Once Gu Ning appeared, Ling Xiaoting's sight fell on her body and there was obvious love in his eyes. Gu Ning noticed Ling Xiaoting within a second and gave him a warning look to tell him to keep their real relationship a secret. Ling Xiaoting understood that it wasn't appropriate to let her family know that they were already in a relationship because Gu Ning was too young. Therefore, Ling Xiaoting hid his love for Gu Ning immediately. However, he felt quite nervous when Gu Man walked to him, which was very unusual. When Gu Ning, Gu Qing and Gu Man stopped in front of Ling Xiaoting put on a serious look and did his best to be easygoing. Gu Qing and Gu Man, on the other hand, were stunned by his outstanding appearance. To their surprise, Gu Ning's friend was an extremely handsome young man. "Mom, Aunt, please let me introduce you. This is my friend, Ling Xiaoting, you can directly call him Xiaoting," Gu Ning said. "Nice to meet you." Ling Xiaoting greeted Gu Man and Gu Qing. Ling Xiaoting tried to be easygoing, but it didn't seem very natural, because he was used to being cold and it wasn't easy for him to change his personality right away. Luckily, Gu Ning had already explained his character to her family beforehand, so Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't mind it at all. In addition, Ling Xiaoting was very good-looking, so both Gu Qing and Gu Man had a good impression of him. "Nice to meet you too." Although Ling Xiaoting understood that Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't know that he was Gu Ning's boyfriend yet, he felt happy when he noticed that they already had a good first impression of him. After all, you didn't have a second chance to make a first impression. In the beginning, Ling Xiaoting was very confused about how to address Gu Qing and Gu Man, because he was Gu Qing's boyfriend, but they weren't familiar with him at all. Therefore, he decided to not address them for now, and he would directly call them his mother and aunt when they found out about his relationship with Gu Ning. Gu Qing and Gu Man actually didn't care about how Ling Xiaoting addressed them. The source of this content N/O/V/L by N. "Let's go now." "The car is parked right outside," Ling Xiaoting said, then guided them walking out. The car that Ai Weichen drove here to pick them up with was a Land Rover, which was the least noticeable car in his eyes, but it was a luxury car in Gu Qing and Gu Man's eyes. Although they didn't know its price, it had to be more expensive than Jiangsu's Mercedes-Benz. Ling Xiaoting opened the car door for Gu Man and Gu Qing before he did it for Gu Ning. Gu Qing and Gu Man sat in the back seat, while Gu Ning sat in the front passenger seat. "Ning, where shall we go first?" Ling Xiaoting looked to Gu Ning and asked. Ling Xiaoting's loving glance made Gu Ning's heart skip a beat. She was a little annoyed at herself because she was easily seduced by his simple look. Gu Ning calmed herself down. "It's too early now. Let's have a rest in clean water blue sky first, and we can go to the Jade Beauty jewelry store after lunch before we go to the factory." "No problem," Ling Xiaoting said, then drove away from the airport. On the way, Ling Xiaoting didn't say a word, because he didn't know what to say. When they arrived at clean water blue sky, they went to Gu Ning's apartment together. Once they were in the apartment, Ling Xiaoting sat on the sofa quietly, watching TV, while Gu Ning was preparing tea for them. "Xiaoting, where are you from?" Gu Man asked. She wasn't investigating his background, but was just chatting with him. Even so, Ling Xiaoting still took it seriously. "The capital." "Do you work in City G?" Gu Qing asked, because Gu Ning told them that he was her friend, not one of her staff. "Nope, I work in the capital, but I'm on vacation now, so I came to City G for a break," Ling Xiaoting said. At that moment, Ling Xiaoting was well prepared to answer the following questions about him. However, both Gu Qing and Gu Man stopped asking, which confused Ling Xiaoting. Why did they stop asking? Is it because they aren't satisfied with my manners today? Actually, it was all because they had no idea that he was Gu Ning's boyfriend. A few minutes later, Gu Ning poured cups of tea for them, and they were chatting while drinking the tea in the living room afterwards. Ling Xiaoting's sight fell on Gu Ning once in a while. Luckily, Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't pay much attention to it, so they didn't find out that there was anything unusual between them. Around 11 a.m., they went out to have lunch together. During the meal, Gu Man put some dishes into Ling Xiaoting's bowl and said gently, "Xiaoting, don't be shy. Since you're Ningning's friend, we're not strangers." Ling Xiaoting was struck dumb for a second, and suddenly felt like crying, because Gu Man's kind behavior made him think of his own mother. "What's wrong? You don't like the dishes?" Seeing Ling Xiaoting being silent for a few moments, Gu Man was a little nervous. She was afraid that she had done something wrong. No, Ling Xiaoting immediately explained, I just remembered my mom. She used to put many dishes in my bowl too when I was a child. It's been a long time and nobody has done that to me, so I felt very touched. Ling Xiaoting didn't know why he would say that aloud all of a sudden. Even Gu Ning didn't expect that he would say that on his own initiative. When they were together, Gu Ning never dared to ask him about his parents, because she knew that it was a painful memory for him. Although it had been over a decade, Ling Xiaoting still felt hurt. However, he felt relaxed after saying it aloud this time. Hearing what Ling Xiaoting had just said, both Gu Qing and Gu Man were surprised. They instantly realized that this young man must have lost his own mother a long time ago, so they had a deep sympathy for him. In order not to bring his painful memory up, Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't ask further. Well, it's a good day when we can gather together here. Come on, let's enjoy the dishes. Gu Man kept putting all kinds of dishes into Ling Xiaoting's bowl to make up for his absent mother's love. Even though it was probably very late, it was meaningful. FIDDEUPTSON.OV/E/LN.com. Ling Xiaoting felt touched by Gu Man's kind gesture, so he did his best to eat as much as he could. When they had almost finished the meal, Ling Xiaoting used the excuse of needing to go to the washroom, but settled the bill without them knowing it. When Gu Qing and Gu Man found out that Ling Xiaoting had already paid the bill, they felt a little embarrassed. You didn't need to do that, Gu Man said. It's fine, Ningning is my friend and a meal is nothing, Ling Xiaoting said with sincerity. Since the bill was already settled, Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't say anything further. In addition, they approved of his way of socializing. After that, the group of them went to Jade Beauty Jewelry. Gu Ning didn't tell Zhou Xinghong that she was going to check the flagship store beforehand, because he would make unnecessary arrangements if he knew that Gu Ning's family would be there too. Therefore, Gu Ning didn't call Zhou Xinghong until they were on the way to the flagship store. However, Zhou Xinghong was in the factory at that moment. Gu Ning then told him that she would be visiting the flagship store first before she went to the factory, so Zhou Xinghong directly waited for her in the factory. The flagship store of Jade Beauty Jewelry was located on the first floor of a shopping mall. It was decorated luxuriously and people would know that it was a high-end jewelry store by a simple glance. Even Gu Qing and Gu Man hesitated to walk inside, although they knew that Gu Ning was the boss. The jewelry in Jade Beauty Jewelry wasn't very dense, instead it was sparsely placed, so that people could clearly see the appearance of each piece. There were around 17 customers in the store along with many saleswomen, and they seemed very busy. Once Gu Ning and the others walked inside, a saleswoman stepped forward and greeted her with great respect. Miss Gu, it's so nice to meet you. The staff in the store all found out about Gu Ning's real identity a few days ago. And they all admired her because she was able to be so successful at such a young age. Hi. You don't need to spend much time with us. I can take them on a walk around, Gu Ning said. Sure, the saleswoman said, then walked away. The other saleswomen were also happy to see Gu Ning, but they were all busy introducing the jewelry to their customers, so they didn't greet Gu Ning right away. When Gu Qing and Gu Man saw the price tags of the jewelry, both of them were astonished even though they knew it wasn't cheap. Jesus! They're so expensive. This jade pendant alone costs over 300,000 yuan. Gu Qing exclaimed. Indeed. I think only the rich can afford them, Gu Man said. 300,000 yuan? It's one of the cheap ones, and there are many pieces of jewelry in this store that cost over 1,000,000 yuan. If you can't afford it, I don't think that you should walk in here, a nearby woman said with obvious disdain. Arrogant women just seem to be everywhere. Gu Qing and Gu Man felt embarrassed again. Although they felt uncomfortable, they knew that they had behaved like bumpkins, so they didn't say anything. However, Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting were displeased. Well, since you're rich, why don't you buy it? Gu Ning said on purpose. Of course I can afford it. The woman actually was hesitating to buy the jade pendant because it was very expensive, but now she made up her mind to buy it in order to show off her wealth. Pack this one, please. I'll pay the 580,000 yuan by card. The jade pendant was made of high-level violet type, so it was very expensive although it wasn't big. No problem. The saleswoman, of course, was excited to strike another deal today, and she admired her boss, Gu Ning, very much too, because Gu Ning made the woman swipe her card just by saying a sentence. Gu Qing and Gu Man, on the other hand, were surprised that the woman swiped her card without hesitation. Anyway, this was Gu Ning's jewelry store, and they all felt happy for Gu Ning, because she made a lot of money from the deal. When the woman came back after she swiped her card at the counter, she looked at Gu Ning and the others with arrogance and provocation. Huh, what can you say now? Can you afford any piece of jewelry here? We don't need to, Gu Ning said airily. Haha, I think you simply can't afford it. The woman laughed at them. The saleswoman who was standing by her side was amused by her stupidity. Gu Ning was the boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, so all the jewelry belonged to her. However, the saleswoman had no intention to tell the woman the truth, because she understood that it was a trap set by her boss. After that, Gu Ning lifted Gu Man's hand and showed the woman the full issue jade bracelet around Gu Man's wrist. Do you know what type this jade is? Gu Ning asked the woman with pride. Full issue. The woman rounded her eyes in shock. Full issue was very easy to recognize. Nevertheless, the woman didn't believe that Gu Man could afford the full issue jade. Is it real? Facing her suspicion, Gu Ning wasn't mad but smiled. Well, this jade bracelet is from Jade Beauty Jewelry. Can it be fake? What? The woman felt embarrassed now. It turned out that she wasn't richer than them at all. Luckily, the store was large and customers weren't close to each other, so not many people noticed what was happening among them. Otherwise, she would be despised by a lot of people, which wasn't a pleasant experience. Without another word, the woman soon slid out of the store in shame. Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't criticize Gu Ning's behavior because it was the woman's fault after all. In addition, they also felt great seeing the woman losing face. Ling Xiaoting, of course, was supportive no matter what Gu Ning did. He even thought that Gu Ning had been too kind to the woman. Afterwards, they went on shopping in the store. Not far from them, there were two beautiful young women choosing jade pendants in front of a display counter. When Gu Ning and the others walked by them, they noticed Ling Xiaoting and were stunned by his outstanding appearance. Wow! The man is so handsome. Indeed! Why don't we strike up a conversation with him? Is the girl who is walking at the front his girlfriend? Is it all right if we just go over and say hi? No idea, but I don't care. Fine, let's go. Although their voices weren't loud, both Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning were able to hear their talk and both of them were displeased. Once the two women arrived at Ling Xiaoting's side, one of them opened her mouth. Hi. Leave me alone, Ling Xiaoting said coldly. The two women were struck dumb for a second, then flushed with embarrassment. To their surprise, the man didn't care about their feelings at all. News tirais at n/fel/b/i/n.co. Gu Ning and her family stopped, then turned back, walking to Ling Xiaoting. People around them also noticed the drama, which made the two women feel more embarrassed. How can you be so rude? We just said hi. Couldn't you be nice? A woman criticized. You just said hi? Do we know each other? And sorry, I heard your little talk just then, Ling Xiaoting said plainly, then his sight shortly fell on Gu Man before he added, I'm not a playboy. Hearing that, Gu Ning understood that he aimed to tell Gu Man that he was a good and reliable man. Haha, I bet the two women didn't expect that the handsome man would be so straightforward. You're right. People around them started to discuss them. Although Gu Man and Gu Qing thought that Leng Xiaoting had been a little rude, they believed that what he had done was right. Shut up! The woman was mad. Do you know who I am? I'm from the Fu family, which is ranked 7th on the rich list of City D. If any one of you dare to annoy me, you can't bear the result. Hearing that, people around them all closed their mouths at once, because none of them dared to annoy the Fu family. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting, however, were exceptions. Very well. Miss Fu, does your grandpa know you like to strike up a relationship with occupied men? Gu Ning said, looking at Fu Yingying with a meaningful smile on her face. Gu Ning wouldn't tolerate it even though the woman was from the Fu family. Fu Yingying was mad at once. Her grandpa, of course, wasn't aware of her behavior, otherwise, her grandpa would be furious. However, she didn't believe that Gu Ning was able to have a connection with her grandpa, so she wasn't willing to be polite to Gu Ning. Instead, she threatened Gu Ning in public, "It's none of your business whether my grandpa knows about it or not. You're merely nobody and you have to apologize to me right now, or I'll tell the manager here to chase you away and blacklist you." Fu Yingying thought that because her grandpa had a good relationship with Zhou Xinghong, who was the boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, the staff who worked in Jade Beauty Jewelry would help her. Moreover, she was from an influential family. UW Evils up Tez on nov/l/bi.com. Oh, really? Gu Ning couldn't help but laugh. The other saleswomen around them looked at Fu Yingying like she was an idiot. It was the funniest joke they had ever heard that she wanted them to chase their boss away from their boss's store. It was impossible that any of them would do that. Gu Ning was a great, generous boss, and the jewelry brand was very popular too, so they were all paid well. In that case, none of them were willing to lose the job. Why don't you try? Gu Ning crossed her arms on her chest, waiting to see another joke. Well, you asked for it. Saying that, Fu Yingying turned to the manager. Hey, you, chase them away and blacklist them right now. And I'll buy more jewelry here later. The manager ignored her order and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Fu. I can't." What? Fu Yingying didn't expect that the manager would dare to reject her, and she was in a rage now. Don't you know that I'm from the Fu family? The manager remained silent, but his attitude showed that he didn't care about her threat at all. Finally, Gu Ning opened her mouth. "Please tell Miss Fu to leave here. She's not welcome." "Sure, boss," the manager said with great respect. Although not many people knew that Gu Ning was the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, it wasn't a secret anymore, so the manager directly called her his boss. However, others in the store were all shocked. What? This young girl is the boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry? Isn't Zhou Xinghong the boss here? No way. She's the boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry? How is it possible? Isn't Zhou Xinghong the boss here? Fu Yingying couldn't believe her ears. She is the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, while Executive Zhou is the general manager, the manager said. Fu Yingying was struck dumb. To her astonishment, this young girl standing right in front of her was the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry. Thinking of what she had done, Fu Yingying felt so embarrassed. "Miss Fu, please leave right now, and your name will be on the blacklist of Jade Beauty Jewelry," the manager said to Fu Yingying. "How dare you do that to me?" Fu Yingying seemed angry, like she was the one who had been treated impolitely. "Miss Fu, please." The manager made a hand gesture to tell her to leave. Fu Yingying still wanted to say something, but she didn't say a word when she saw that everyone was looking at her with obvious disdain. She snorted in anger, then walked away. And the woman who followed Fu Yingying also left. Since they already knew that Gu Ning was the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, other customers in the store couldn't help but give her glances of admiration. Ning Ning, it seems that the woman is from an influential family. Is it appropriate that you've treated her like that? Although Gu Man knew that Gu Ning had made friends with many important figures, she was still worried. Don't worry. It's fine. Master Fu is the first person I met when I came to City D, and we get along quite well. He won't blame me for it, Gu Ning explained to Gu Man. Lin Xiaoting, of course, didn't care about the Fu family because the Fu family was barely comparable to his powerful family. That's great. Gu Man was relieved. After that, they went to the factory. It was almost 3 p.m. when they left the store, so Gu Ning told Gu Man to call Gu Qinyang or Wen Yuan. They planned to visit them that night if they were home. Gu Man called Gu Qinyang later. When Gu Qinyang heard that they were going to visit him, he was delighted. It would be the first time that Gu Qing and Gu Man had visited him. At the same time, Gu Qinyang also felt guilty and ashamed because he had never invited them to visit him at his home before. Gu Qinyang then told Gu Man the address of his home and that he would be home before 6 p.m. After hanging up the call with Gu Man, Gu Qinyang called Wen Yuan at once. He told her that Gu Man and the others were going to visit them. Wen Yuan was also very happy to hear the news. She decided to buy some seafood for dinner. Before long, Gu Ning and the others arrived at the factory of Jade Beauty Jewelry. Nice to meet you, boss, Mr. Lang. Zhou Xinghong greeted them with great respect. Hi, Uncle Zhou, this is my mom, Gu Man, and my aunt, Gu Qing, Gu Ning introduced. In the following minutes, they greeted each other before Gu Ning guided Gu Qing and Gu Man to have a tour around the factory. When Gu Qing and Gu Man saw the piles of jade in the factory, they rounded their eyes in shock. There were far more pieces of large jade than the jade jewelry they had seen in the store, and the piles of jade must be worth a fortune. Ning Ning, how much are these piles of jade worth? Gu Qing asked. Jade is very valuable, but actually it's just a stone if nobody wants it. As long as we can sell them out, they're worth over hundreds of millions of yuan. However, if we can't, they're just piles of stones. It isn't necessary anyway, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, both Gu Qing and Gu Man took a long breath in. Over hundreds of millions of yuan. In fact, Gu Ning's wealth was far more than that. And her goal was to be the #1 super rich woman in the country. Gu Qinyang wouldn't be home until 6 p.m., so Gu Ning and the others spent the afternoon in the factory. In the meantime, Gu Ning discussed with Zhou Xinghong about opening branches of Jade Beauty Jewelry. Ling Xiaoting, on the other hand, sat aside remaining quiet. Even though he did nothing, he didn't feel bored as long as Gu Ning was by his side. Gu Qing and Gu Man were very curious about everything in the factory, so the tour was quite interesting in their eyes. The decoration is coming to an end in City B, so we can prepare for the opening ceremony in a week at the most. How is the jewelry now? Gu Ning asked. Although the branches opened almost at the same time in the capital and City B, Gu Ning decided to open the branch in City B first, because they had prepared everything there. All they needed now was well-made jade jewelry. As for the gowns, although Yuzi couldn't make 11 new sets, she had already finished 5, and would use some old designs to complete the rest. UW on NOV/L/BI.com. Gu Ning understood that she seemed a little cold-blooded because she was busy dealing with her business when Tang Yunfan was still unconscious. However, she still had to live her life and chase her dream. In addition, it was Tang Yining's soul in Gu Ning's body. Although she accepted Tang Yunfan as her father, she didn't have many feelings towards him. Tang Yunfan was still unconscious, but his body was in good condition, so Gu Ning wasn't very worried about his life. We've hired more workers, and it's almost done, Zhou Jinghong said. Boss, can we rent the 200 square meter large factory next door? This factory we're using now is a little small. Sure. Gu Ning agreed. When it was almost 5 p.m., Gu Ning and the others left the factory. Before they left, Gu Ning took a set of jewelry along with a jade pichot, which were gifts for Wen Yulan and Gu Qinyang. They also went to a supermarket to buy some fruits on their way to Gu Qinyang's place. Since Ling Xiaoting needed to send Gu Qing and Gu Man back to the apartment later, Gu Man invited him to join the dinner. Mom, I'm having a gathering with my friends this evening, so I won't be coming back to the apartment tonight, Gu Ning said to Gu Man. Will Xiaoting go with you? Gu Man asked. Sure. We're going to meet our mutual friends. They are all from either rich or powerful families, and it's helpful to my business, Gu Ning lied without hesitation. Great. Gu Man didn't doubt Gu Ning at all. Moreover, there was only one bed in the apartment. Gu Ning would have to sleep on the sofa if she stayed in the apartment with them. Ling Xiaoting, on the other hand, smiled a little with satisfaction. Gu Man and Gu Qing didn't notice Ling Xiaoting's reaction, but Gu Ning did. She rolled her eyes at him. Why are men always thinking about having sex? Nevertheless, Gu Ning also understood that a man stopped loving you if he didn't have any sexual desire for you. Although it sounds a little embarrassing, Gu Ning had to admit that she sometimes wanted sex too. Gu Ning and the others knocked on the door of Gu Qinyang's place around 6 p.m., and Gu Qinyang was already home. When Gu Qinyang opened the door and saw that they came with many packages, he felt embarrassed. You didn't need to bring so many gifts. Afterwards, Gu Qinyang invited them to walk inside, and he was stunned by Ling Xiaoting's outstanding appearance when Ling Xiaoting walked by him. This is? He asked Gu Ning. Oh, he's my friend, Ling Xiaoting, and he's our private chauffeur for the 2 days we are in City F, Gu Ning said. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ling. Gu Qinyang greeted him politely. Nice to meet you, Ling Xiaoting said. When Yulan went grocery shopping and wasn't home yet, while Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi were watching TV in the living room. Seeing them walking inside, Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi didn't show any pride like they had done before but felt uneasy. Although Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi didn't have good characters, they weren't little kids after all, so they understood that things were different. Now, Gu Qinyang and their mother had already told them about what had happened to Gu Xiaoxiao and the fact that Gu Ning was the real boss of Jade Beauty Jewelry, so neither Gu Yining nor Gu Qingshi dared to laugh at Gu Ning anymore. They also received thick red envelopes from Gu Qing and Gu Man. Upon thinking about what they had done before, they felt ashamed. When they were all seated, Gu Qinyang criticized Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi because they hadn't greeted Gu Man and the others yet. Hey, you two don't forget your manners. Gu Qinyang had reminded them beforehand, but they suddenly remained so quiet now. Hearing that, both of them greeted Gu Man and Gu Qing with embarrassment. Haha, it's fine. Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't mind that they had been rude to them before. After all, they were just children. Gu Man took out 2 boxes the size of a book, giving them to Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi. These are the gifts from me and your Aunt Qing for you. You can open it now to see whether you like it. The gifts were 2 tablets. Gu Yining's and Gu Qingshi's eyes lit up at once when they saw the brand logo. However, they didn't dare to take the gifts right away but looked at Gu Qinyang with anticipation. They had to ask for their father's agreement. Man, Qing, you don't need to buy such expensive gifts for them. Gu Qinyang felt embarrassed because he knew that the tablets were very expensive. It's no big deal. Children today all love this brand of tablet, Gu Man said airily. She wasn't showing off her wealth, she just knew that they would like it. Gu Qingyang also understood that Gu Qing and Gu Man were just being nice to them. Since they said so, Gu Qingyang didn't insist. "All right, take your gifts and thank your two aunts." Hearing that, Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi were excited and thanked Gu Man and Gu Qing. "Thank you so much, Aunt Man, Aunt Qing." "You're welcome," Gu Qing and Gu Man said. After that, Gu Qingyang went to pour glasses of water for them. Before long, Wen Yulan was back with many vegetables and seafood. "Yulan, you've bought so much. Can we finish all of it?" Gu Qing and Gu Man said. "Oh, don't worry. We can do our best to eat it all," Wen Yulan said. It was already past 6 p.m., so Gu Qing and Gu Man helped Wen Yulan cook, because it would be faster. Gu Ning, Ling Xiaoting and Gu Qingyang, meanwhile, were chatting randomly in the living room, while Gu Yining and Gu Qingshi were studying their new gifts. Gu Qingyang asked Ling Xiaoting some questions, like where he came from, where he worked and so on. The/W novel chapters are published on no/vel/bin.co/m. Ling Xiaoting told him that he was an army officer, working in the general military region in the capital. As for his position in the army, Ling Xiaoting didn't tell him. Gu Qingyang didn't ask him either, because he believed that Ling Xiaoting was merely a normal army officer at such a young age. However, Gu Qingyang did think highly of Ling Xiaoting once he found out about Ling Xiaoting's job because most people held great respect and admiration towards soldiers. After a while, the people in the living room smelt the aroma of food. With her acute sense of smell, Gu Ning smelled the scent of seafood and subconsciously looked at Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting frowned a little at this time. Gu Ning immediately stood up, walking into the kitchen. When she saw all the seafood on the counter, Gu Ning was greatly surprised. It was true that she loved seafood, but Ling Xiaoting was allergic to it. "Do we have other food except seafood?" "Xiaoting is allergic to it," Gu Ning asked. Hearing that, those in the kitchen stopped what they were doing for a moment. Wen Yulan hadn't known that Ling Xiaoting was allergic to seafood. Luckily, she also bought many vegetables and other meat. "Oh, don't worry. We have other food." Hearing that, Gu Ning relaxed. Seeing Gu Ning's back, Ling Xiaoting felt very happy that she cared about him. When Gu Ning turned around, she saw the gentle smile on Ling Xiaoting's lips and her heart skipped a beat all of a sudden. She took a long breath in at once to calm herself down. Was it because Ling Xiaoting was too charming, or was it because she couldn't resist his charm? She was easily seduced by his slight smile. Seeing Gu Ning's reaction, Ling Xiaoting felt more satisfied and pleased. He loved to see Gu Ning's flushed face. Gu Ning, however, didn't dare to look at Ling Xiaoting anymore, because she was afraid that she would lose her manners. Around 7:30 p.m., the dinner was ready. Gu Qingyang wanted to drink some alcohol with Ling Xiaoting, but Ling Xiaoting was going to drive, so he gave up. During the meal, Gu Qing and Gu Man kept putting all kinds of dishes into Ling Xiaoting's bowl like what they had done the last time. Gu Ning suddenly felt strange seeing that her mother and aunt were doing that for Ling Xiaoting but ignored her. Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan, on the other hand, didn't understand why Gu Qing and Gu Man kept putting dishes into Ling Xiaoting's bowl, but they didn't ask. Wen Yulan would have believed that Ling Xiaoting was Gu Ning's boyfriend if Gu Qing and Gu Man hadn't told her that Ling Xiaoting was just Gu Ning's friend. In Wen Yulan's eyes, Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning matched each other very well. Gu Ning was a successful businesswoman now, and it was quite understandable that she socialized a lot to make friends with different kinds of people. It was very helpful for her business after all. After dinner, it was 8:30 p.m., and they had a rest in the living room. At that moment, Gu Ning took out her gifts for Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan. "Uncle and Aunt, these are gifts for you. Please take them." "What? Why did you prepare gifts for us? You're the younger generation and we should be sending a gift to you," Exactly. Both Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan were surprised. It's fine, and I've also prepared gifts for Aunt Qing and Uncle Su, so please take them. Gu Ning directly put the gifts into their hands. Well, they hesitated to take the gifts. Please take them. Ningning is just being kind and we all have gifts from her, Gu Qing said. Indeed. Please take them, Gu Man added. Ningning, thank you so much. Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan said. Nobody was unhappy to receive gifts. When Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan took Gu Ning's gifts, they opened the boxes to see what was inside. Gu Qingyang was shocked when he saw the jade piece the size of a fist in his box. He knew that Gu Ning did jade business, so this piece had to be real. Although he didn't know much about jade and couldn't recognize its type, he had heard that a jade piece was very expensive. And this one could be worth over 1,000,000 yuan. Gu Qingyang understood that Gu Ning wouldn't send cheap gifts, but he didn't expect that it would be so valuable. When Yulan opened her box, and her face lit up at once when she saw the set of jade jewelry in it. Women all loved jewelry, but some of them just couldn't afford it. When Yulan was from a poor family and she lived an okay life after she married Gu Qingyang. However, a set of expensive jewelry was a luxury for her, and she only had a set of gold jewelry till now, which was worth around 10,000 yuan. All West ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. 10,000 yuan was also over her budget actually, but it was an anniversary gift Gu Qingyang gave her a few years ago. However, a set of gold jewelry was barely comparable to a set of jade jewelry. She had heard that the cheapest jade pendant of jade beauty jewelry cost at least hundreds of thousands of yuan, so this set of jade jewelry that Gu Ning gave her had to be worth a lot. The set included a jade pendant, a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a ring. According to the price level of jade beauty jewelry, it could be worth over 1,000,000 yuan. Except for their apartment, when Yulan had never gotten something which was worth over 1,000,000 yuan before. Besides, they were still paying the housing loan. Ningning, the gifts are too expensive, Gu Qingyang said. It's fine. Please take them. Gu Ning said. Since Gu Ning insisted, Gu Qingyang and Wen Yulan took the gifts and thanked Gu Ning. After resting a bit, Gu Man and the others left when it was almost 9 p.m. Gu Qingyang's apartment was small and couldn't accommodate many people, so Gu Qingyang didn't invite them to stay in their place. When Gu Man and the others were gone, Wen Yulan said to Gu Qingyang, "Qingyang, Ningning is so generous. I feel ashamed of the way we treated them before." Gu Qingyang sighed, "Me too." Luckily, they changed their attitude and behavior on time. After that, they surfed the internet to find out what types of jade Gu Ning had given them. Gu Qingyang's piece was made from jade of the medium high-level water type, while Wen Yulan's jewelry was made from the jade of the high-level violet type. Although they didn't know their specific prices, they knew that their gifts cost at least 10,000,000 yuan. They looked at each other in great shock. Jesus! Ningning is too generous. Wen Yulan was short of words to describe her astonishment now. Facing the two luxurious gifts, they had no idea what to do. When they were back at clean water blue sky, Ling Xiaoting waited in the car, while Gu Ning walked Gu Man and Gu Qing upstairs. Once Gu Ning got back in the car, Ling Xiaoting pressed her against the back of the seat. In the following minutes, Ling Xiaoting wildly kissed Gu Ning. He hadn't seen Gu Ning in many days, and felt like they hadn't seen each other in ages. Ningning, Ling Xiaoting called Gu Ning, staring straight at her eyes. He didn't even bother to hide his desire for her. What? Gu Ning blinked. Ningning, Ling Xiaoting called again. What? Gu Ning was confused. Ningning, Ling Xiaoting called her once more. What? Gu Ning was a little annoyed. Nothing. I just want to call your name. Ling Xiaoting smiled. Gu Ning was amused, then pushed Ling Xiaoting away. You're so childish. Ning Ning, Ling Xiaoting kept calling her. However, Gu Ning didn't answer him anymore, so Ling Xiaoting stopped. Anyway, he could soon spend a whole night with her, and he had a lot of time to do what he wanted, but before that, they had to go somewhere else. Do you still remember Ai Weichen and Onyanin? They attended the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry before. We're going to meet them in a clubhouse now, Ling Xiaoting said. Sure. Gu Ning replied. With Gu Ning's great memory she, of course, remembered Ai Weichen and Onyanin. Since Ling Xiaoting brought her to meet them, they must have a close relationship with him. Before long, Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting arrived at a high-end clubhouse. In a VIP private room, Ai Weichen, Onyanin, and another 2 men along with another woman were already there. The 2 men were Ai Weichen's older brother, Ai Weishen, and Ai Weishen's comrade, Zhao Lang. Zhao Lang was also a member of the Red Flame, and he ranked 11th in the team. Of course, it was a secret that others didn't know. The woman was from the Ai family too. She was Ai Weichen and Ai Weishen's cousin, Ai Ruishue. Ai Weishen was 30 years old and resembled Ai Weichen, but Ai Weichen was the type of man who was gentle, kind, charming, while Ai Weishen was a little serious but sexy because he was a soldier. Zhao Lang was 26, 2 months younger than Su Jinchen, so he ranked below Su Jinchen. Although he had a plain face, he had an outstanding air too. Ai Ruishue was a pretty girl around 25. Zhao Lang came here with Ai Weishen, so he sat and kept talking with Ai Weishen. Ai Ruishue sat along with Ai Weichen and Onyanin. They were playing a game while drinking. Both Ai Weichen and Onyanin had an absent look and couldn't focus on the game, but Ai Ruishue could do nothing about it. Onyanin was thinking of Ai Weishen, while Ai Weichen was thinking of her. A love triangle was really torturous. Ai Weishen kept talking with Zhao Lang, not only because they came here together, but also because he was avoiding Onyanin. He knew that Onyanin loved him, but he only regarded her as his younger sister. He had made it clear to Onyanin, and Onyanin kept a polite distance away from him. However, because of him, she had stayed single until she was 30, which made him feel a little guilty. Even so, he couldn't accept her, because he knew that it wasn't a healthy relationship. Oh, will Xiaoting be coming alone? Zhao Lang asked Ai Weishen. No idea. He didn't mention it, Ai Weishen replied. I want to meet Xiaoting's girlfriend. I'm curious about what kind of girl can attract Ling Xiaoting, who is famous for his coldness to women. I even thought that Xiaoting would be single throughout his lifetime. Zhao Lang said. They had all heard from Si Ming that Ling Xiaoting had a girlfriend, but none of them had met the girl yet. They, of course, didn't dare to ask Ling Xiaoting, so they turned to Si Ming and Su Jinchen for more details. However, neither Su Jinchen nor Si Ming told them much, but just said that the girl was very beautiful. They didn't believe that Ling Xiaoting would be attracted to a girl who was only pretty, because Ling Xiaoting wasn't shallow. I'm curious too, Ai Weishen said. Actually, everyone in the Red Flame was curious about Ling Xiaoting's girlfriend. It wasn't a secret among them that Ling Xiaoting didn't have much interest in women. Although Ai Weishen was still unmarried at the age of 30, he was different from Ling Xiaoting, and there was also a woman he loved and wanted to marry. Unfortunately, the woman hadn't agreed yet. Thinking of that, Ai Weishen felt very sad. At that moment, someone knocked on the door. Ai Weishen said, "Come in." And the door was pushed open. The first one that came inside was a waiter. Then Ling Xiaoting showed up. In the beginning, they all believed that Ling Xiaoting would come alone. However, to their surprise, he was followed by a young girl. Ling Xiaoting would never stay alone with a woman unless the woman was his girlfriend. Like what Si Ming had told them, the girl really was very beautiful. Ai Weichen and Owen Yanin had already met Gu Ning before, and both of them believed that she had to be Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend. Since they showed up together now, Ai Weichen and Owen Yanin were sure about their relationship. Ai Ruishua didn't know Leng Xiaoting or Gu Ning, but was stunned by their outstanding appearances, especially Leng Xiaoting, who was even more handsome than any man that she had ever met before. In addition, he had a natural air of nobility, which caught people's attention the moment he appeared. Leng Xiaoting guided Gu Ning to sit on the sofa next to Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang. "Hi!" Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang greeted them. "And this is?" Ai Weishun asked. "She's Gu Ning." "My girlfriend," Leng Xiaoting said with pride. Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang were amused by Leng Xiaoting's unusual attitude. "Nice to meet you, Miss Gu." Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang greeted her. It was the first time that they had met each other. "This is Ai Weishun and this is Zhao Lang," Leng Xiaoting introduced them to Gu Ning. "Nice to meet you too." Gu Ning greeted them. "And they're Ai Weichen and Owen Yanin." "You've met them before," Leng Xiaoting said. Leng Xiaoting didn't know Ai Ruishua, so he didn't introduce her. Besides, she was a woman and Leng Xiaoting subconsciously disliked strange women. Owen Yanin, on the other hand, was different, because she was very close to Leng Xiaoting. She followed Leng Xiaoting's lead and Leng Xiaoting regarded her as his younger sister. There was also a story between them. 3 years ago, the O family had been in a period of fighting about heirs. Owen Yanin was a talented businesswoman, so the leader of the O family had planned to make Owen Yanin the sole heir of the O family. However, her uncle had been dissatisfied with that decision, so her uncle had hired a killer to kill Owen Yanin. At that time, Ai Weichen had been in the same place as Owen Yanin, so they had fallen into danger together. It was Leng Xiaoting who had rescued them. Because of that, Owen Yanin had followed Leng Xiaoting's lead since then. As long as Leng Xiaoting needed her help, she would spare no effort to help him. Ai Weichen followed Leng Xiaoting's lead as well. Although Leng Xiaoting was a man of few words, he understood that a network was very important, so he accepted it. Afterwards, it turned out that their families all knew each other well. Most up-to-date novels are published on n0velg.co/m. In the following years, the Ai family and the O family did business with Xingshi Group often, which boosted each other's companies. "Hi, Miss Gu." Ai Weichen and Owen Yanin greeted her politely. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Ai and Miss O." Gu Ning said. "This is my cousin, Ai Ruishua," Ai Weichen introduced. Gu Ning and Ai Ruishua greeted each other, but Leng Xiaoting directly ignored Ai Ruishua. After that, they chatted, drank and played games together. "Miss Gu, since you're Xiaoting's girlfriend, you're our friend too. Do you mind if I directly called your name?" Ai Weishun asked. Gu Ning was Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend after all, and they would love to be friendly to her. Moreover, as long as Leng Xiaoting accepted her as his girl, he would be loyal to her throughout his lifetime. "Of course not," Gu Ning said. "Gu Ning, where are you from?" Ai Weishun asked. "City F," Gu Ning said. "How old are you?" Zhao Lang asked. 18, Gu Ning replied. "What? She's only 18? Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang were shocked. They didn't expect that Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend would be so young. Even Ai Ruishua was greatly surprised because she was still single at the age of 25, but Gu Ning already had a boyfriend when she was just 18. Ai Weichen and Owen Yanin, on the other hand, remained calm because they already knew Gu Ning's age. Ai Weishun and Zhao Lang soon changed the topic. A while later, Ai Weishun challenged Leng Xiaoting to play Sick Bo 1. Sick Bo also known as Tai Sai, Dai Su, big and small or high-low, is an unequal game of chance of ancient Chinese origin played with 3 dice, and the loser had to drink a cup of alcohol. They played 6 rounds in all, and Leng Xiaoting had lost 3 times, so he had to drink 3 cups of alcohol. Gu Ning's heart ached for Leng Xiaoting, so she said to Ai Weishun, "I challenge you." "What? Does your heart ache for him?" Ai Weishun teased. "Yes, my heart aches for him, so I will win it back," Gu Ning said plainly. "Very well. I'm curious how you'll win it back. However, don't cry if you lose." Ai Weishun laughed. He wouldn't refuse to have several rounds with Gu Ning, and he was curious to see how she would win the game. "Of course not." Gu Ning smiled with confidence, then shook the dice cup. The dice knocked around in the dice cup, making clear sounds. When Gu Ning laid the dice cup on the table with a loud sound, she looked to Ai Weishun with a broad smile. "Big or small?" Since Ai Weishun regarded her as his friend, she would treat him as her friend as well, and didn't bother to obey manners. "Big," Ai Weishun guessed with obvious confidence. After that, Gu Ning opened the dice cup. The total score exceeded 11, which was big, and Ai Weishun was right. Ai Weishun wore a satisfied smile looking to Gu Ning, but Gu Ning didn't care. Even though he was right, it was impossible that Gu Ning would lose with her jade eyes. It wasn't an equal game, but Ai Weishun had no idea. Although it seemed unfair if Gu Ning used her jade eyes, she wasn't harming people, she just wanted to win the game and make Ai Weishun drink more cups of alcohol. "My turn now." Ai Weishun smiled, then shook the dice cup. After a while, he put it back on the table. "Big or small?" he said to Gu Ning. "Small," Gu Ning replied. The dice cup was opened, and the total score was below 11, which was small, so this was an even round. After that, Gu Ning guessed right every time. However, Ai Weishun was wrong sometimes. Sick Bo, or big and small, was an unequal game of chance played with 3 dice, so it was normal that someone who was lucky could be right many times, while someone who wasn't that lucky could be wrong often. As the game went on, Ai Weishun finally felt that something had to be wrong. They had played 10 rounds in all. 5 were even rounds, and Ai Weishun lost another 5 rounds, while Gu Ning had never lost once, which was a shocking result. Everyone was astonished, except for Leng Xiaoting, who seemed very proud and curious at the same time. How was it possible that Gu Ning won every time? Even if she was lucky, she might lose at least once. "It's crazy that you haven't lost once." Ai Weishun couldn't believe the result. "You don't believe it? I can give you a chance to get revenge," Gu Ning said and challenged him. "Sure. Let's continue for another 5 rounds." "I don't believe that I'll lose again," Ai Weishun said and accepted the challenge. However, when another 5 rounds were finished, Gu Ning still hadn't lost once. "Fine, I give up." Ai Weishun gave up, because he knew that he couldn't win no matter how many rounds he kept playing with Gu Ning. After drinking several successive cups of alcohol, Ai Weishun felt a little uncomfortable. "Let me try." Although Zhao Ling had witnessed the whole process, he didn't believe that Gu Ning could be that lucky, so he challenged her. Gu Ning, of course, wouldn't reject. If they wanted to drink, she wouldn't let them have enough. After 7 rounds, Zhao Ling gave up because he had lost more rounds than Ai Weishun, and had to drink 5 successive cups of alcohol. "All right, I give up." Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. Actually, Ai Weishun had the idea to challenge Gu Ning too, but both Ai Weishun and Zhao Ling had lost and drank a lot of alcohol afterwards. He had no doubt that he could win more cups than them. "How did you do it?" "Either it was an even round, or you won it," Zhao Ling asked. "Well, I can figure out the total score by hearing the sounds of dice knocking against each other in the dice cup," Gu Ning said. She was lying, because she couldn't tell them the truth. They had heard before that some people, especially the god of gamblers, had the ability to make judgments by hearing the dice sound, so they didn't think that Gu Ning was lying. Instead, they all admired Gu Ning now. Ling Xiaoting didn't stay there with them for long and left with Gu Ning around 11 p.m. The others didn't play too late either and left soon. Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning went straight to the Huangdang Hotel. Although Ling Xiaoting seemed calm as usual, he actually couldn't wait a second longer and wanted to arrive at the hotel as soon as possible. That being the case, he drove much faster than usual. Gu Ning understood what was on his mind and was amused. "Do you want to eat something first?" Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting was a little displeased. Obviously, he was reluctant to waste time on the road, but he was worried that Gu Ning was hungry, so he asked, "Are you hungry?" Seeing Ling Xiaoting's reaction, Gu Ning laughed. "I'm not. I was just worried that you are hungry," Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting was relieved. Then he said with an amorous smile, "Well, I am hungry, but food can't satisfy me." "You," Gu Ning blushed at once. Ling Xiaoting laughed this time. He enjoyed seeing Gu Ning blush. Gu Ning, on the other hand, was regretful now. Finally, they arrived at the hotel. Once the door was closed behind them, Ling Xiaoting pressed her against the wall and kissed her, while his hand moved upward to the familiar soft place. Gu Ning had her magical power to protect herself, so she didn't wear much clothing in winter, so she couldn't help but give a moan of sexual pleasure when Ling Xiaoting's hand touched her skin. Ling Xiaoting lifted Gu Ning up, quickly walking to the bedroom. Without hesitation, Ling Xiaoting undressed himself and Gu Ning when they were both on the bed. Gu Ning felt shy looking at Ling Xiaoting, waiting for his next movements. Ling Xiaoting, however, became a little rude and violent after having restricted himself for so many days. "Ning Ning, do you want me?" Ling Xiaoting's warm breath, which was full of sexual desire, touched Gu Ning's ear, and Gu Ning flushed more. She couldn't resist it and subconsciously answered, "Yes." Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting got excited and moved more rapidly. Gu Ning moaned in pain, but the pain was soon replaced by pleasure. In the following hours, the two kept making love and orgasmed again and again till both of them were exhausted. The next day. Although they didn't sleep until it was very late last night, Gu Ning still got up around 7 a.m. the next morning. She left Ling Xiaoting alone in the hotel, then took a taxi heading to Clean Water Blue Sky. She told Ling Xiaoting to wait for her message before he came to pick them up. They couldn't go there together, because it would arouse suspicion. Ling Xiaoting understood, so he didn't stop Gu Ning, but kissed her wildly before she left. In fact, he wanted to have sex again, but she was in a hurry, so he gave up and planned to do it in the evening. Once Gu Ning was in the taxi, she called Gu Man and asked her what they wanted to have for breakfast. A while later, Gu Ning brought breakfast back to her apartment in Clean Water Blue Sky. Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't ask where she had stayed last night, because they believed that Gu Ning was a girl with morals. After breakfast, they watched TV in the living room. Gu Qing and Gu Man already had an appointment with Wen Yulan, and they would dine together at noon before shopping together. Visit n0vl/bin. For the best novel reading experience. Today was Saturday, so Wen Yulan was free. City G was a second-tier city, which was far larger than City F, and there were many high-end shopping malls. Although they had nothing special to buy, they loved shopping. Around 10 a.m., Gu Ning called Ling Xiaoting and told him to pick them up before going to pick Wen Yulan up. In front of Gu Man and Gu Qing, Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning kept an appropriate distance away from each other, so nobody found out their real relationship. However, when Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't pay attention to them, Ling Xiaoting would make eyes at her, and Gu Ning almost had lost control of herself several times. Gu Ning was a little annoyed, but couldn't say anything in case Gu Man would find out. When they went to pick Wen Yulan up, when Yulan seemed in a bad mood. Yulan, what's wrong? Gu Man and Gu Qing asked with concern. Qin Yang just received Qin Xiang's call. He told us that his affair with his secretary was exposed and Li Juan wants to divorce him. He wanted us to help him stop Li Juan from doing so, but it's his own fault after all and we can do nothing about it. Wen Yulan said in anger. Hearing that, Gu Qing and Gu Man were displeased too. Gu Qing said, we have all heard about it too. I think that you better not get involved in the mess and let them deal with it themselves. Well, we're mad not because of that, but Qin Sheng even asked us to borrow money from you for him because his company can barely stay afloat now. We refused to do so and he swore at us. How could he do that to us? Wen Yulan said. That was the real reason why Wen Yulan was in a bad mood. She understood that Gu Qinsheng wanted to borrow some money to keep his company stay afloat, but she couldn't understand why he asked them to borrow several million yuan for him. Gu Qinsheng had also sworn at them after their refusal, which was totally unacceptable. Besides, Wen Yulan and Gu Qinyang didn't trust Gu Qinsheng now. They thought that Gu Qinsheng would probably never pay them back even if they borrowed money for him. They were merely normal public servants and it was impossible for them to pay several million yuan back. Moreover, if Gu Qinsheng's family had been nice to Gu Ning would be willing to help them. Although Gu Qinyang's family had also treated Gu Man rudely, they hadn't hurt her too much and had changed their attitude on time, so Gu Ning was still generous to them. Gu Qinyang's family changed their attitude not because of Gu Ning's wealth, but because of her ability and power. In addition, they also saw that it wasn't a bad thing to have close relatives. We won't lend them money, but we won't see them dying in hunger either, Gu Man said with determination. Hearing that, Gu Ning was relieved. Gu Man finally knew how to be tough and gentle at the same time. All right, let it go. Let's go have some fun together. Gu Qing changed the topic at once. After lunch, Lin Xiaoting paid the bill as usual. And the group of them went to a shopping mall afterwards. It was an undeniable truth that enemies often cross each other's path. When Yulan seldom went to this shopping mall, because she wasn't rich enough. However, when she finally got a chance to come here, she ran into an old acquaintance. Of course, she didn't like the person. It was a man who was around 35 years old. He was slightly fat with a plain face, dressed in designer's brand, but he didn't seem noble at all. Instead, he had an air of a parvenu. A parvenu is a person of humble origin who has gained wealth, influence, or celebrity. Oh, isn't this my old classmate, Wen Yulan? It's been ages. The man was surprised to see Wen Yulan and greeted her at once. However, he didn't seem kind but arrogant. When Wen Yulan noticed the man, she was very displeased and felt disgusted. Let's go another way, Wen Yulan said to Gu Man, trying to avoid the man. Nevertheless, the man wouldn't let Wen Yulan go, and stood in her way. What? You don't remember me? Oh, you must be pretending, because I, Zhang Shunlin, am not a poor kid anymore, but a rich man with dozens of millions of yuan in wealth, and you, an ordinary public servant, feel ashamed to see me again. It sounded like Wen Yulan had abandoned him because he had been poor. Although Gu Ning didn't know any details, she didn't believe that it was the truth. Wen Yulan was pretty, and it was impossible that she would like this short, fat man with a plain face, unless she was blind. Wen Yulan was in a rage. Zhang Shunlin, enough. I don't care about you, so please stay away from me. I know, but I just want to see how are you doing right now, since you were so proud and thought lightly of me. Zhang Shunlin smiled with pride, then looked to Wen Yulan with obvious disdain. Look at you! What are you wearing? You must live a poor life now. If you had been my girlfriend, you could be living a much better life right now. Hearing that, Gu Ning understood what had happened. The man must have chased Wen Yulan in vain, and now he was showing off his wealth. It had been so many years, but he still wouldn't let it go. He couldn't be a quality man, and it was totally a miracle that he could make so much money. It's none of your business. Wen Yulan was furious and shouted at him, I don't care about your money. You don't care about money? I've never seen a woman who dislikes money yet. You just can't afford luxurious things, so you pretend that you don't like them. Poor you, Zhang Shunlin said. In his eyes, women were all gold diggers. Like those beautiful young girls. They all chased him now precisely because he was rich. And he enjoyed his life very much now. Zhang Shunlin, enough is enough. We were just common classmates, and what you said has already damaged my reputation. Wen Yulan felt aggrieved and mad. She hadn't hurt him at all. She had just rejected him when he had chased her before. Why did he suddenly believe that she had rejected him because he had been poor? You rejected me because I was poor. Zhang Shunlin insisted. Wen Yulan was speechless in rage. The man was so unreasonable. Wen Yulan disliked him because the man had so many shortcomings. Even though he was rich now, she was still unwilling to talk to him. Of course, she didn't say that aloud, otherwise, Zhang Shunlin could go crazy. Interesting. Gu Ning laughed at Zhang Shunlin. Why don't you look at yourself in the mirror before you claim that women disliked you because you were poor? Don't you know that you're short, fat, ugly, and unreasonable? You don't deserve others' respect or admiration, and all those young beautiful women come to you now just for your money. And, do you know how many people have dozens of millions of yuan in wealth in City D? Even a businessman with over 100 million yuan in wealth wouldn't be as arrogant as you. Who do you think you are? Normally, Gu Ning didn't like attacking people, but she had to teach the man a lesson right now. The man's face turned red in anger. At the same time, onlookers standing around them started to defend Wen Yulan after Gu Ning's criticism towards Zhang Shunlin. Exactly. He's not the richest man in City D after all. He also doesn't have a good personality. He's merely showing off his wealth. He's so selfish. No one would like him. 5ddeu upts on n.o.v/e/ellen.com. It's normal that women would reject men that they dislike, and that's not a reason for him to be so mean. Zhang Shunlin was furious, glaring at Gu Ning like he couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. However, at this moment, he met Lin Xiaoting's cold sharp eyes, which was quite threatening, and he was suddenly out of breath because of fear. Let's go! Gu Ning didn't want to waste time arguing with Zhang Shunlin, so she walked away with the others. Zhang Shunlin was scared by Lin Xiaoting's look, so he didn't dare to chase them. Nevertheless, when they were all gone, Zhang Shunlin wore an evil expression. Wen Yulan, let's see. I promise that you'll regret. In the Tang family's house, City B. It was Saturday, so the members of the Tang family were all home. Everyone was upset because of Tang Yunfan's condition. It's been 4 days. Why is Yunfan still unconscious? Tang Haifeng sighed. He had already sighed countless times today. Luckily, Tang Yunfan was only unconscious and his body was fine, while he was breathing normally. Otherwise, the Tang family would have been more worried. When the lunch was just over, Quan Mingkai quickly walked into the house. Master Tang, the board of directors somehow heard the news that Lord Tang is unconscious, so some of them are arguing to select a new chairman, said Quan Mingkai to Tang Haifeng. Hearing that, Tang Haifeng was displeased. He wasn't surprised that they would hear the terrible news, because the truth always came out, but he was still mad, especially at the person who leaked the news. Tang Yinhang had warned everyone who knew the news not to leak it, but the news was still leaked out. Apparently, the person was scheming against them. Therefore, Tang Haifeng was furious. Whoever leaked the news, chase him or her out of the Tang family. There were only a few people who knew that Tang Yinfan was still unconscious, so it wasn't hard to find out who leaked the news. "Sure, Master Tang," Quan Mingkai said. "As for the board of directors, I'll go talk to them in person," Tang Haifeng said, standing up. Although Tang Haifeng was already in his early 70s, he was able to stay strong with the help of Gu Ning's pills, and he looked like a man around 50. He hadn't slept well these days because of Tang Yinfan's body condition, but he still had the ability to control the turmoil. All the members of the Tang family were worried about Tang Haifeng's health, but only he could resolve the crisis now. Tang Yinhang and Tang Yinrong were also shareholders of the Tang Huang Group, so they went to their company building along with Tang Haifeng. Although they were just shareholders, not managers, they had the right to speak. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. Black sheep were everywhere, and the Tang Huang Group was not excluded. Under Tang Yinfan's control, Tang Huang Group developed very well, but the bright future of a company lay on peace and harmony among its staff. However, ambitious people wouldn't always stay quiet. Therefore, once the news that Tang Yinfan was unconscious was leaked, those ambitious directors who always wanted to replace Tang Yinfan started to create chaos. They believed that Tang Haifeng was too old to manage such a large business group, and there was no one else, except Tang Yinfan, and the Tang family who knew how to do business, so the board of directors had to select a new chairman from among themselves. Nevertheless, Tang Haifeng's appearance shocked them. To their astonishment, Tang Haifeng was still able to stay so healthy and strong. They thought that he would be an aged, old man who could do nothing now. Besides, they had also heard that Tang Haifeng had heart disease, so most of them believed that he would be lying in bed sick after hearing what had happened to Tang Yinfan, which was the main reason those ambitious directors dared create chaos. Tang Haifeng had retired many years ago, but he was still an influential figure in the business group, and everyone still held great respect for him. The moment Tang Haifeng appeared, those ambitious directors became quiet. Of course, they just remained quiet for now, and it was impossible for them to give up their plans. In the broad meeting room, Tang Haifeng sat in the chairman's chair with a serious look, glancing at every director, which made them feel quite stressed. "Master Tang, a country can never have an absent king, while a business group can never have an absent leader. Chairman Tang has been unconscious for many days, and we think it's time to select a new chairman for the sake of the company," Tang Deming said. He was the fourth principal shareholder of the Tang Huang Group, and was from the branch of the Tang family. The Tang family's business was a family business, so there were some members from the branch of the Tang family in the shareholders. Tang Haifeng had retired, so those directors called him Master Tang. "I agree. If our business opponents find out that our chairman is absent, they'll seize the chance to attack us," Fu Kaiyu said. He was the seventh director in the board. "Who told you that our chairman is absent? Master Tang is still healthy and strong, and I think that Master Tang can be the acting chairman till Chairman Tang is awake," Tang Jilin argued. He was the fifth director in the board. Tang Jilin was also from a branch of the Tang family, but he was loyal to the Tang family, so he was the first person who stood out and disagreed to select a new chairman. "I agree with Jilin," the eighth director said. Tang Yinhang and Tang Yinrong, who were the second and third directors in the board, of course, stood by Tang Haifeng's side. In the end, among 9 directors in the board, 5 disagreed to select a new chairman, 2 abstained, and 2 agreed to do so. Since the majority disagreed, the proposal wouldn't stand. Tang Deming and Fu Kaiyu, who had the ambition to compete for the seat of chairman, were upset and annoyed, but they could do nothing about it. As long as Tang Haifeng was here, they could only wait for another good opportunity. Anyway, Tang Haifeng was an old man and he couldn't manage the company for long. If Tang Yunfan was unconscious forever or died, they would then have to select a new chairman. In addition, when Tang Yunfan was the chairman, they had no chance to unseat him because they were frightened by his ways of controlling the company. Since Tang Yunfan was absent now, they could have enough time to prepare for their scheme. Tang Haifeng warned them seriously later, "I don't know how you were able to hear the news that Yunfan is unconscious, but I don't want anyone else to hear about it. No matter who leaks the news, he's fired." "Sure, Master Tang," they replied. Those who were loyal to Tang Huang Group, of course, wouldn't leak the news, while those ambitious directors also wanted to keep it a secret in case their business opponents would seize the chance to attack Tang Huang Group, which could ruin their scheme. However, some people had a different idea. When the meeting was over, Tang Deming went back to his office and made a call. "We need to adjust our plan. Tang Haifeng is the acting chairman now," Tang Deming said. "What? Tang Haifeng is the acting chairman now?" The person on the other side of the phone was greatly surprised, but then said airily, "He's too old to manage such a large business group." "No, he seems very healthy," Tang Deming said. "It's fine. As long as Tang Yunfan stays unconscious, there will be no one else in the Tang family that can take over the company. The most important thing you need to do now is to bribe the two directors who have abstained, so that we'll have a better chance to win," the person said. "No problem. I understand," Tang Deming said, then hung up. In a study on the second floor of a 3-story villa at a suburb near to City B, a middle-aged man in a black suit was sitting in front of a desk. He stared at his phone and looked evil. "Tang Yunfan, good for you. You've dodged the bullet again and again. However, I won't allow it to happen again this time." At that moment, someone knocked on the door of the study. The man was cheered up at once. "Come in." The door was pushed open by a young girl in her early 20s. She was pretty and tall. "Dad," the girl called. "Xinrui, welcome back. How was your interview in the Tang Huang Group?" the man asked. Tang Xinrui smiled and said with confidence, "Dad, you know that I'm an excellent economics graduate from the best college in Country M. So I've been hired into the finance department." "Very well." The man was satisfied. "Your older brother is useless, so you must work hard. I promise that you'll be the heir of the Tang Huang Group once we get control of it." Hearing that, Tang Xinrui was excited with her eyes full of ambition. "Dad, don't worry. I won't let you down." "Oh, Dad, I saw Master Tang today when I went for the interview in Tang Huang Group," Tang Xinrui said. She was slightly worried. "He seems very healthy and I'm afraid that Tang Huang Group won't be in chaos anytime soon." "I know, but it's fine. We can let him be the acting chairman for a few days," the man said. He didn't believe that Tang Haifeng had the ability to manage the business group for a long time. "Great. Dad, I trust you. May I leave now?" Tang Xinrui said. "Sure," the man said, then Tang Xinrui left. It was impossible that Tang Yunfan alone could manage Tang Huang Group so well, and he had many able assistants and business partners to help him. Tang Yunfan's two secretaries, Quan Mingkai and Yan Weiluan, were his best assistants who were also good at doing business. In addition, Quan Mingkai and Yan Weiluan had helped Tang Yunfan deal with many problems, so both of them were experienced. In that case, even if Tang Yunfan was absent for a while, Quan Mingkai and Yan Weiluan could also manage Tang Huang Group well. If Tang Yunfan woke up soon, the company would be safe and prosperous as usual. Tang Haifeng didn't leave right after the meeting was over, but went to the chairman's office. "Pay more attention to Tang Deming and Fu Kaiyu," Tang Haifeng said to Quan Mingkai and Yan Weiluan. "Sure," they said. They were aware that Tang Deming and Fu Kaiyu were ambitious, but they didn't know that the two were actually secretly scheming with another person against Tang Yunfan. When Tang Yunfan was in the company, Tang Deming and Fu Kaiyu didn't dare conduct their plan. In fact, there had been 10 directors in the board, but Tang Yunfan had shut 2 of them out precisely because of their disloyalty. Even if they were founders of Tang Huang Group, they had already benefited a lot from the company. Tang Huang Group had never treated its staff or shareholders badly. Therefore, no matter who hurt the benefits of Tang Huang Group, he or she would be fired. In City G, Gu Man and the others had a tour in a shopping mall for 2 hours, but they didn't buy anything. Gu Man felt a little tired, so they had a break in a cafe. Gu Ning coincidentally noticed the cafe where she and Bai Shuiyan had been last time, which was Alan's cafe, so they went there. Alan was also in the cafe during this time, so he went forward to welcome Gu Ning in person.
Hi.
Gu Ning, nice to meet you. It's been a while. Seeing another man being so enthusiastic towards Gu Ning, Lin Xiaoting was slightly displeased, although he knew that they were just friends. However, Lin Xiaoting didn't show it on his face.
Hi, Alan.
Gu Ning said. Alan glanced at Gu Man and the others, then asked politely, "Are these beautiful ladies your relatives?" Hearing that, Gu Man and the other women were delighted. They were indeed very beautiful, even though they weren't young.
Yes.
Gu Ning said.
Nice to meet you all.
I'm Alan, Alan said.
Alan, nice to meet you too, they said.
Oh, there is also a handsome man. Is he your older brother or friend? Alan didn't ignore Lin Xiaoting because Lin Xiaoting was too outstanding to be ignored, and it seemed like Lin Xiaoting disliked him. Alan wasn't dumb, and he soon understood why Lin Xiaoting seemed cold to him. He's my friend, Gu Ning said.
Welcome,
Alan said to Lin Xiaoting. Although Lin Xiaoting disliked Alan, he remained polite.
Hi,
Lin Xiaoting said lightly. Alan didn't mind Lin Xiaoting's attitude, but said, "Well, I won't bother you any further, and please feel free to let me know whenever you need anything." Alan didn't intend to charge them the fee of the meal in the cafe, but Lin Xiaoting insisted to pay it, which amused Gu Man and the others. Alan wanted to give them a discount but was also declined by Lin Xiaoting. When they left the cafe, it was only 4 p.m., so they went to Wen Yulan's place and planned to have dinner there. Read the latest stories on novilbin.com. Gu Qinyang was out with his friends, so only Gu Qingshi and Gu Yining were home when Wen Yulan came back. However, when Wen Yulan, Gu Man and Gu Qing were cooking dinner, Wen Yulan's phone rang. The caller was Gu Qinyang, but the person who spoke on the phone was a stranger. "Are you Gu Qinyang's wife?" Hearing that, Wen Yulan had a feeling that Gu Qinyang was in trouble. "Yes, I am." "Who are you and where is my husband?" Wen Yulan was nervous. Hearing that, Gu Qing and Gu Man looked at Wen Yulan in confusion. "I'm Long Gu, from the Qing gang. Your husband, Gu Qinyang, has broken an antique vase which is worth 2 million yuan in the Dihao clubhouse. Take 2 million yuan to Dihao clubhouse within an hour or you can't bear the result." After that, he hung up. "What?" Wen Yulan was totally shocked and almost fell on the ground. "What's wrong? What happened?" Gu Qing and Gu Man were worried. Qinyang is in trouble." Wen Yulan's face turned pale, and her voice was trembling. "What? What happened to Qinyang?" Gu Qing and Gu Man were astonished. From Wen Yulan's reaction, they knew that it had to be a lot of trouble. Gu Ning heard their conversation and walked to the kitchen at once. Wen Yulan said in a trembling voice, "The man said that he's Long Gu from the Qing gang. Qinyang has broken an antique vase which is worth 2 million yuan in Dihao clubhouse. And if I can't take 2 million yuan to Dihao clubhouse within an hour, they'll..." Although Wen Yulan didn't know what they would do to Gu Qinyang specifically, it couldn't be good because they were members of the Qing gang. when Yulan almost cried. What? Hearing that, Gu Qing and Gu Man were also scared. Let alone ordinary people, even those who were rich or powerful were afraid to annoy the Qing gang, because the Qing gang would do anything for money. Gu Ning thought that it wasn't that simple, but before she got to know more details, she couldn't jump to conclusions. Since Gu Qingyang was in trouble, she had to help him out. Don't worry. Xiaoting and I will bring Uncle Qingyang back, Gu Ning said to comfort them. But Gu Man was worried about Gu Ning's safety. We'll be fine, Gu Ning said. I know many important figures in the Qing gang, and they won't hurt Uncle Qingyang for my sake. Hearing that, Gu Man suddenly realized that several members of the Qing gang had attended the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry before, and they had even sent Gu Ning a gift which was worth over dozens of millions of yuan. Therefore, they chose to believe Gu Ning. At the same time, they were also worried that the Qing gang would hurt Gu Ning for money. It wasn't a bad thing to maintain a relationship with the Qing gang, but it could be harmful too. Nevertheless, Gu Ning was their only hope now, so they could only hope that Gu Ning would be fine. When Leng Xiaoting heard Gu Ning say that she knew some important figures in the Qing gang, he became a jealous lover. As long as Siti was involved he would be displeased, but he didn't show it on his face. Shouting, please keep an eye on Ningning, Gu Man said to Leng Xiaoting when they walked out of the kitchen. Gu Man thought that Leng Xiaoting had to be strong enough to protect a girl, since he was a military officer. Don't worry. I will, Leng Xiaoting said seriously like it was a promise. Indeed, it was his promise. As long as he was by Gu Ning's side, he wouldn't allow anyone to hurt her. Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning then left for Dihao Clubhouse. Dihao Clubhouse was a 24-hour clubhouse, and it would only close on New Year's Eve. Once they entered Dihao Clubhouse, Gu Ning told the reception, I'm here for Long Gu. Tell him Gu Qingyang's family is here. The reception called Long Gu at once, and Gu Ning along with Leng Xiaoting went to the number 7 private room on the 6th floor according to Long Ji's order. In the number 7 private room, Gu Qingyang hadn't been beaten or tied, but sat on the chair quietly. On the sofa across from Gu Qingyang, a man in his early 30s was smoking with his legs crossed. This man was precisely Long Gu, who was a middle manager of Dihao Clubhouse. Behind Long Gu, there were 4 strong men who followed Long Ji's lead, and Gu Qingyang was obviously scared of them. He, of course, couldn't afford 2 million yuan and Gu Ning was his only hope now. However, he planned to pay her back in the future. After hanging up, Long Gu looked at Gu Qingyang and sneered. Your family is here. If they come with enough money, you'll be lucky today. However, he didn't believe that Gu Qingyang's family could afford that much money. Hearing that, Gu Qingyang was relieved. Before long, someone knocked on the door of the private room. A young girl, followed by a man, walked in later. Long Gu was a little confused, because he had called Gu Qingyang's wife. Are they Gu Qingyang's daughter and son? He thought to himself. We're Gu Qingyang's family and we're here to take him home, Gu Ning said. The door closed behind them. Ning Ning! Seeing Gu Ning, Gu Qingyang almost cried in excitement. As long as Gu Ning was here, he would be safe. Long Gu was struck dumb for a second when he saw Gu Ning's face clearly, then he jumped up from the sofa in shock. Are you Miss Gu? Gu Ning was a little surprised that the man recognized her, but she soon realized that it had to have been Siti who told some important members in the Qing gang to remember her face in order to protect her. Yes, I am, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Long Gu felt embarrassed. If Gu Qingyang was Gu Ning's family, he would be punished by Siti for annoying Gu Ning. I'm sorry, Miss Gu, I had no idea that Gu Qingyang is your family. Since you're here to take him home, you may leave right now. Long Gu panicked a little. He was worried that Gu Ning would be mad at him. Seeing Long Ji's attitude towards Gu Ning, Gu Qinying was totally shocked, but he soon remembered that several members of the Qing gang had attended the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry before. Nevertheless, he was still impressed by Gu Ning's network. It seemed that Gu Ning was really influential. Vi sit en velben, cm for eu ovals. Although Long Gu was being very polite, Gu Ning ignored his apologies. Well, I heard that my uncle broke an antique vase which is worth 2 million yuan, Gu Ning said. Can we go to the Antique Association to have it verified before we pay the money? Hearing that, Long Gu understood that Gu Ning wouldn't leave until she found out the truth. Therefore, he told her everything. After all, Gu Ning was his boss's friend, and he didn't dare annoy her. Miss Gu, in fact, the antique vase Mr. Gu broke was fake, Long Gu said carefully, in case Gu Ning would be mad at him. However, Gu Ning remained calm as usual. Obviously, it wasn't a surprising answer. From Gu Ning's face, Long Gu immediately knew that this young girl wasn't simple. What? It's fake. Gu Qinying, on the other hand, almost shouted out. He couldn't understand why they did that to him. After that, Long Gu told them the details. It was Zhang Shunlin who had schemed against Gu Qinying. Zhang Shunlin happened to know some people who were Gu Qinying's friends, so he gave them money to let them help him call Gu Qinying out and trap Gu Qinying. Zhang Shunlin and Long Gu came from the same city, but they weren't actually close. Long Gu merely helped him for money. Zhang Shunlin turned to Long Gu for help and gave him 100,000 yuan. As for the 2 million yuan Gu Qinying would have to pay for the vase, they would share it 50-50. Because of Sitiye's order, members of the Qing gang hadn't moonlighted for a long time to make extra money, but Long Gu gave in to money and agreed this time. Unexpectedly, he made a wrong decision. Zhang Shunlin. Gu Qinying clenched his teeth in anger. It was obvious that he had known Zhang Shunlin for a long time. Zhang Shunlin had chased Wen Yulan back when they had been in college. Once Wen Yulan had rejected him, he had spread rumors around that Wen Yulan only liked the rich and disdained the poor. Zhang Shunlin was merely a selfish man, who didn't care about others' feelings, he only cared about his own benefit. If he had been a charming gentleman, he could have attracted girls' attention. Like Gu Qinying, who wasn't rich, but treat Wen Yulan very well. Up-to-date OVLS on OVL bin.cm. Besides, Zhang Shunlin never paid much attention to his appearance, which was one of the reasons girls wanted to keep a distance from him. This time, Gu Qinying hated Zhang Shunlin the most. As for his so-called friends, he hated them too. To his astonishment, his friends would scheme against him just for money. Well, Long Gu, if you hear that anyone else is going to hurt my uncle, please give my uncle a helping hand if you don't mind, Gu Ning said politely. Of course. Of course, Long Gu said. If he had known that Gu Qinying was Gu Ning's uncle, he wouldn't have trapped him. After figuring out the truth, Gu Ning didn't say anything further, but left with Gu Qinying. However, Gu Ning had no intention to forgive Zhang Shunlin. Ning, thank you so much. If it hadn't been for you, I could have been beaten or killed. Gu Qinying was still frightened. Well, I should apologize to you instead. If I hadn't criticized him in public, he probably wouldn't have trapped you, Gu Ning said and felt a little guilty. It wasn't the first time that Wen Yulan had met Zhang Shunlin, but Zhang Shunlin normally would make fun of her and wouldn't take actual actions to hurt Wen Yulan or Gu Qinying. However, he had lost face in public last time when he had encountered Gu Ning in the shopping mall, so he would of course take revenge since he was so selfish. Ning, it's not your fault. Zhang Shunlin is a selfish backstabber. Gu Qinying didn't blame Gu Ning, but hated Zhang Shunlin more than ever. He wasn't a weak man, and there was a long-standing grudge between him and Zhang Shunlin, but he had to tolerate it because he didn't have the ability to punish Zhang Shunlin.
Uncle, how much do you know about Zhang Shunlin?
Tell me about him, Gu Ning said to Gu Qinyang.
Not very much.
I only know that he does equipment wholesale business and has dozens of millions of yuan in wealth, Gu Qinyang said. Ling Xiaoting understood what Gu Ning planned to do, so he said, "Let me handle it."
Great.
Gu Ning didn't reject. If Ling Xiaoting was willing to help her, she wouldn't mind, because she needed to give him some chances to prove his ability as her man. Gu Ning was so outstanding, and Ling Xiaoting sometimes felt like he was useless. He thought that it was his duty to protect his girl. Therefore, Ling Xiaoting was cheered up when Gu Ning agreed. Hearing their talk, Gu Qinyang understood that they were going to punish Zhang Shunlin and felt excited. Zhang Shunlin deserved it. After that, Gu Ning called Gu Man and told her that Gu Qinyang was fine. Although Gu Ning said that Gu Qinyang was fine, Gu Man, Gu Qing and Wen Yulan were still worried about his safety before they saw him in person. Gu Qingshi and Gu Yining, on the other hand, had no idea what their father had just been through and kept playing on their tablets. When Gu Ning and them got back, Wen Yulan was finally relieved after seeing that Gu Qinyang was fine.
What happened?
How did you break the Qing gang's antique vase? Wen Yulan asked Gu Qinyang. Gu Qinyang then told Wen Yulan everything. Hearing that it was Zhang Shunlin's scheme, Wen Yulan was furious at once. Zhang Shunlin had made fun of her, and he even wanted to trap them this time. 2 million yuan was a fortune for them, and it was impossible for them to pay it. Luckily, Gu Ning helped them, otherwise, their family would be ruined. What a backstabber Zhang Shunlin is. I really want to beat him, Wen Yulan said in anger. Don't worry. Ningning will handle it, Gu Qinyang said. Hearing that, Wen Yulan relaxed slightly. Since Gu Qinyang was safely home, they dropped the topic and enjoyed dinner. After the meal, Gu Ning received Bai Shuiyan's call. Once Gu Ning answered the call, Bai Shuiyan criticized Gu Ning on the phone. Gu Ning, why didn't you tell me that you're in City G now? Gu Ning immediately explained, I came here along with my mom and aunt just for a short trip, so I didn't tell anyone. Well, you could have told me, Bai Shuiyan insisted. Gu Ning didn't know what to say. What? Aren't we friends? Bai Shuiyan questioned. Gu Ning thought that it was hard to explain it to Bai Shuiyan, so she remained silent. What? Aren't we? Bai Shuiyan asked again. Yes, of course. Gu Ning said resignedly. What are you doing now? Bai Shuiyan asked. I'm in my uncle's place, Gu Ning said. Why don't you come out and meet me? I'm in Alan's cafe, Bai Shuiyan said. From Bai Shuiyan's tone, Gu Ning understood that she was in a bad mood. All right, I'm coming, Gu Ning said. Great. Bai Shuiyan was satisfied. After hanging up, Gu Ning told Gu Man that she was going to meet a friend in City G. Gu Man had heard their conversation on the phone, so she didn't stop Gu Ning. Since your friend invited you to meet her, we can go home right now. Shouting can send us back to clean water blue sky before driving you there, Gu Man said. It's so early now. Please stay for a while longer and Qinyang can send you home later, Wen Yulan said. Yes, Gu Qinyang echoed. Don't worry. We can get Shouting to send us home, Gu Man said. Gu Qinyang and Wen Yulan didn't insist but invited them to have a meal together tomorrow. Gu Man wasn't sure when they would be flying back to City F, so she didn't answer yet, but said that she would call them tomorrow. Since Gu Ning was going to meet Bai Shuiyan, Gu Man thought that she would probably stay in a hotel for the night again. Ning Ning, there is only one bed in your apartment. I think that either your aunt and I can stay in the hotel or you can stay in the hotel.
What do you think?
Gu Man said. Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting was cheered up. Gu Ning was amused by Ling Xiaoting's reaction. If she stayed in the apartment with her mother and aunt tonight, he probably wouldn't want to sleep alone. He seldom met with Gu Ning, so he wanted to spend as much time as possible with her. Even though they stayed together during the day, he had to keep an appropriate distance away from Gu Ning and had to mind his behavior. I can stay in the hotel, Gu Ning said. Although Gu Qing and Gu Man were worried about Gu Ning's safety, because she was a very beautiful young girl, they soon relaxed upon thinking about how good she was at Kung Fu.
Oh, when will we fly back tomorrow?
Gu Man asked.
I'll check on the internet, but I think that we can fly back after lunch, Gu Ning said.
After that, Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting drove Gu Qing and Gu Man back to clean water blue sky, then they left together. When they were gone, Gu Qing suddenly said to Gu Man, "Man, don't you think that Ning Ning and Xiaoting are very close to each other? Are they boyfriend and girlfriend, or is Xiaoting chasing Ning Ning?" Although Ling Xiaoting never showed his love for Gu Ning in front of them, Gu Qing thought that he couldn't just be Gu Ning's normal friend given what he had done these last 2 days. However, Gu Qing was only guessing. She wasn't actually sure of it. Gu Man, on the other hand, was very surprised. She didn't realize that Ling Xiaoting treated Gu Ning really well until Gu Qing pointed it out.
No way.
Ning Ning is only 18, Gu Man said. She's already 18, so she's an adult now, Gu Qing said. Well, Gu Man frowned because she didn't want Gu Ning to have a boyfriend at such a young age. Seeing that Gu Man was worried, Gu Qing comforted her, "I'm just guessing so I could be wrong. To be honest, I think that Xiaoting is a reliable, handsome man. Even if he really is Ning Ning's boyfriend, it's not a bad thing. And he's a military officer after all, so he has to be an upright person. In many people's eyes, soldiers stood for honesty and loyalty." Anyway, Gu Qing had a great impression of Ling Xiaoting. "I trust Ning Ning. She knows what she should do and shouldn't," Gu Qing added. Hearing that, Gu Man agreed. When Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning were finally alone together, Ling Xiaoting stopped hiding his love for her. However, he was driving the car but kept giving her glances, which was dangerous, so Gu Ning said to him, "Focus on the road. Stop glancing at me. We haven't spent much time with each other today, and we're finally alone together, so I have to seize the chance," Ling Xiaoting said in an aggrieved tone. Gu Ning rolled her eyes. He had actually made eyes at her many times when Gu Qing and Gu Man hadn't been paying much attention to them. "Nevertheless, you're driving now and you have to be careful," Gu Ning said. "Fine, I can wait till tonight," Ling Xiaoting said in amorous tone. Gu Ning felt like laughing, but didn't say anything further. Before long, they arrived at Alan's cafe. It was only 9 p.m., so there were many people in the cafe. Bai Shuiyan was talking with Alan when Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting walked inside. Seeing Gu Ning coming, Bai Shuiyan stood up at once and hugged her. "Gu Ning, you're finally here. I missed you so much." Bai Shuiyan behaved like they were a couple who had been separated from each other for a long time. Seeing Bai Shuiyan hugging Gu Ning tightly in her arms, Ling Xiaoting was a little displeased. Gu Ning was his girl and he wouldn't allow anyone else to hug her tightly. Bai Shuiyan then noticed Ling Xiaoting, who was standing behind Gu Ning, and she was stunned by his outstanding appearance. "Jesus, Gu Ning! Is this your boyfriend? He's so handsome. Is he a star or something?" "He is my boyfriend, but not a star," Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Alan wasn't surprised, because he had sensed Ling Xiaoting's dislike today when they met each other for the first time. "Have a seat please, Gu Ning and Mr. Ling," Alan said. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting sat on one side, while Bai Shuiyan and Alan sat on the other. "Mr. Leng, please allow me to offer you free drinks this time," Alan smiled and said to Leng Xiaoting. "Thanks," Leng Xiaoting said. He wouldn't reject this time. He had rejected the free drinks last time because Gu Man had been there. Gu Man was his future mother-in-law after all, and he had to prove himself. Bai Shuiyan glanced at Leng Xiaoting, and Gu Ning then said with obvious envy, "Look at you two. You're meant to be together." Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was pleased. "Here is the menu. Please order as much as you want. It's all on Alan." Bai Shuiyan gave the menu to Gu Ning, then glared at Alan like he was her enemy. Alan wore a wry smile, but he actually didn't mind how many drinks they ordered. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting just had dinner and were already full, so they ordered 2 drinks and a plate of fruits. Bai Shuiyan, however, was displeased. "Why did you order so little? Get your avrite ovals at no/v/e/lbn.com. We just had dinner and we're already full," Gu Ning said, blinking her eyes. "Fine," Bai Shuiyan said. "Give the menu to me," Bai Shuiyan said, then she ordered 5 different types of snacks, a fruit salad and spaghetti. Gu Ning and Alan were both astonished. "Can you eat all of that?" Alan asked. "What? Didn't you say it's your treat this time?" Bai Shuiyan questioned him. "Of course," Alan said. "I'm just afraid that you'll hurt your stomach by eating too much." "None of your business," Bai Shuiyan said, then ignored him. Alan then didn't say anything further. Their drinks and snacks were soon placed on the table, and Bai Shuiyan immediately started to eat alone. Gu Ning and Alan understood that she was in a bad mood and needed to vent her anger. After a short while, Alan stood up and left. "What's wrong? It seems like you're in a terrible mood," Gu Ning asked. From Bai Shuiyan's attitude towards Alan, Gu Ning believed that Alan must have something to do with Bai Shuiyan's bad mood. She didn't know whether Alan knew that Bai Shuiyan liked him, but she couldn't see any hint of fondness for Bai Shuiyan from Alan. Anyway, it was hard to draw a conclusion from appearances. However, there was a huge age gap between them, so Gu Ning thought that it wasn't very likely that they would get together. Although as long as the two loved each other, age wasn't a problem, only a few people could make it happen. Alan was almost 30 years old, while Bai Shuiyan was only 17 years old. She wasn't even an adult yet, so she was just a teenager in Alan's eyes. "Nothing," Bai Shuiyan said. Since Bai Shuiyan didn't want to say it right now, Gu Ning stopped asking. After a long while, Alan didn't come again, and Bai Shuiyan began to wear an absent-minded look. "I'm done." Bai Shuiyan only finished a third of the food that she had ordered. Actually, she was already full, and she had ordered that much just to vent her anger. "Gu Ning, he declined to be my boyfriend," Bai Shuiyan said all of a sudden. Gu Ning was surprised. To her astonishment, Bai Shuiyan already told Alan about her feelings towards him, and Alan had already declined to be her boyfriend, but why did Alan still seem fine to be around with Bai Shuiyan? "He said that I'm too young to be his girlfriend and that I'm just a teenage girl in his eyes, but I'm already 17 years old now and I'll be an adult in 2 months. Bai Shuiyan said. "He said that he likes mature, sexy women, but I will be a mature, sexy woman in a few years." Hearing that, Gu Ning didn't know what to say. It was their personal affair after all. How can he say that I'm too young to be his girlfriend? Isn't he too old to be my boyfriend? Bai Shuiyan said in anger. Right at this moment, Alan walked to them, and Bai Shuiyan closed her mouth at once. However, before Alan walked to their table, he was stopped by a woman halfway. "Hi, Alan," the woman greeted Alan, and her voice sounded so gentle and alluring. The woman was tall and slim and had long, dark red hair with large waves, wearing a black tight-fitting sweater, a pair of black stockings and red high heels. She looked very sexy and charming. Seeing that, Bai Shuiyan was extremely displeased, staring at the woman's back like she was going to tear her apart. Alan, on the other hand, seemed unwilling to see the woman and disdain flashed through his eyes. However, out of politeness, Alan still greeted her. "Hi, Miss Wu, may I help?" "Alan, can you sit with me for a while?" the woman asked. "I would love to, but my friends are there waiting for me," Alan said. "What a shame!" "Well, actually I came here alone. If you don't mind, may I join you?" The woman wouldn't let Alan go. In fact, Alan didn't come here often, while she was a frequent guest in order to meet him. Unfortunately, she rarely succeeded, so she definitely wouldn't let him go since she finally encountered him. Sorry, it's not up to me," Alan said. It was a gentle way to reject the woman. If the woman wasn't dumb, she would let him go right now. "Sorry, no." Bai Shuiyan interrupted them. "It's my reservation, and I don't want strangers to join us." Hearing that, the woman turned to look at Bai Shuiyan and she was very displeased. Actually, she had already decided to leave since Alan said that, but what Bai Shuiyan said annoyed her, so she changed her mind. However, when Bai Shuiyan saw the woman's face, she snorted with laughter. The woman had done plastic surgery so many times that her face looked really strange now. It wasn't hard to notice that her face was completely artificial now. "What's so funny?" the woman frowned and asked. Nothing, Bai Shuiyan said, but it was obviously a perfunctory answer, especially when she did her best not to laugh out loud. The woman was mad. She wasn't an idiot, and she knew that Bai Shuiyan was laughing at her. "Please don't get mad, or your nose might move aside and your jaw could fall down and then you'd have to spend more money to adjust them," Bai Shuiyan said, pretending to be considerate. The woman was angrier now. However, she was really worried that her nose would move aside and her jaw would fall down, so she didn't dare to move her facial muscles, but forced herself to calm down, which was quite amusing. "Alan!" The woman turned to Alan for help. "Miss Wu, I'm so sorry. She's just a naughty child, so please forgive her," Alan apologized. It was also a perfunctory apology, and he wasn't scolding Bai Shuiyan for it at all. The woman was in a rage now. A naughty child? She understood that Alan was on Bai Shuiyan's side and it was meaningless to argue with them, so she glared at Bai Shuiyan before she turned around walking away. Although Alan didn't scold Bai Shuiyan for what she had done, he disagreed with her rude and impulsive behavior. Bai Shuiyan really was too young. Bai Shuiyan probably didn't notice the dissatisfaction in Alan's eyes, but Gu Ning did. Bai Shuiyan truly wasn't his type, because Alan liked a mature woman or partner while Bai Shuiyan was simply an impulsive child. Ling Xiaoting also preferred to choose a mature girl to be his girlfriend. Gu Ning knew that Ling Xiaoting was attracted to her precisely because she was far more mature than her age. If she was as impulsive as Bai Shuiyan, Ling Xiaoting probably wouldn't like her. Even Gu Ning disliked immature men. In fact, nobody wanted his or her partner to be a child forever, because it was very tiring. Alan came to them then said, "I'm sorry. I have to leave now. Please enjoy yourselves here." The source of this content n/o/v/l by n. Hearing that, Bai Shuiyan snorted with disdain, turning her head aside. Although it seemed she didn't care about Alan now, she actually felt quite disappointed because Alan left soon after she finally got a chance to meet him. However, she didn't understand that it was her own behavior that chased Alan away. Ling Xiaoting and Gu Ning said goodbye to Alan then. After Alan was gone, Bai Shuiyan lost her appetite. Seeing that, Gu Ning could do nothing but act dumb. Right at that moment, Mrs. Bai called Bai Shuiyan and urged her to go back home, so they left the cafe. Bai Shuiyan had her own car, so Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning didn't send her home. On their way back to the hotel, Gu Ning discussed what had happened between Alan and Bai Shuiyan with Leng Xiaoting. Age isn't a problem, but they are totally different types of people, so it's hard for them to get along with one another, Leng Xiaoting said. In fact, he had also noticed Bai Shuiyan's fondness towards Alan and Alan's dissatisfaction towards Bai Shuiyan just then. Then why do you like me? Gu Ning suddenly asked. Well, Leng Xiaoting thought for a while before he opened his mouth. My heart skipped a beat when I saw you for the first time, but it's undeniable that I'm attracted to your maturity. I think that we're the same type of people. Gu Ning was right. Actually, Gu Ning held the same opinion. If Leng Xiaoting had been an immature man, Gu Ning wouldn't have fallen in love with him either. Well, if I were as innocent or naive as my peers, would you still love me? Gu Ning asked. I don't know because you're not, but what I do know is that you already occupy my heart, Leng Xiaoting said. I know that you're a smart girl with morals, and I trust you. Leng Xiaoting had been with Gu Ning for a long time, but they had never argued with each other. They loved each other a lot. Most importantly, they understood one another deeply. They were just talking about Bai Shuiyan and Alan, but Gu Ning somehow felt touched by Leng Xiaoting's words. Once they were back in the hotel, Leng Xiaoting pressed Gu Ning on the bed. Wait a second! I need to book plane tickets first. Gu Ning pushed him away. Leng Xiaoting was reluctant to move away from Gu Ning's body, but he knew that she had to book the plane tickets tonight, so he hugged her in his arms while she was booking plane tickets on the internet. However, Leng Xiaoting didn't stop his hands, but kept touching and rubbing Gu Ning's body, which annoyed Gu Ning. Couldn't you stop for a while? I'm checking the plane tickets right now. Leng Xiaoting replied like he was innocent. Go on. I won't prevent you from doing so. Gu Ning felt like laughing. The man must be tortured by his desire now. Gu Ning then removed his hands from her body and warned him. Don't touch my body for now, or you'll sleep alone. Fine, I'll leave you to it and I'll go take a shower first. Be quick. I want you when I get back, Leng Xiaoting said. Gu Ning flushed a little but didn't answer him. Leng Xiaoting then went into the bathroom. Gu Ning booked plane tickets for 2:50 p.m. tomorrow, so that they could fly back after having lunch. Gu Ning didn't book a plane ticket for Leng Xiaoting because he couldn't go back with them on the same flight, but he would take the next flight. Since Gu Ning already booked the plane tickets, Leng Xiaoting didn't wait a second longer and directly pressed her against the bed, kissing her wildly. The next morning, Gu Ning would go back first after taking a shower and putting clothes on, while Leng Xiaoting would wait in the hotel for her call. All of a sudden, Gu Ning felt they were like having an affair. Even though they were boyfriend and girlfriend, it wasn't the right time to reveal their real relationship yet. Before Gu Ning left, Leng Xiaoting kissed Gu Ning for a long time and didn't let her go until she was out of breath. Gu Ning glared at him afterwards. Ning Ning, don't you know that your glare isn't threatening at all, but is quite alluring instead? Leng Xiaoting breathed deeply to calm himself down in case he would lose control of himself and press her against the bed again. You, Gu Ning flushed, then ran away. When she had just walked out of the hotel, she received Master Bai's call. Gu Ning wore a wry smile when she saw the caller's name. Bai Shuiyan must have told Master Bai that she was in City G. Hi, Master Bai. Hi. Why didn't you tell me that you came to City G? Master Bai raised his voice on the phone. Gu Ning immediately explained, I just came here with my mother and aunt for a short trip, so I didn't call you. Are you free today? Master Bai asked. Gu Ning understood that if she said yes, Master Bai would arrange a meal to meet her. Gu Ning didn't want him to bother, so she said, "I'm sorry, Master Bai, I've already booked the plane tickets and we'll be going back to City F soon." "Fine, but you have to spare some time to meet us the next time you come here," Master Bai said. He was a considerate old man. "Sure," Gu Ning replied. In the Tang family's house, City B. That afternoon, Zhao Yiru, a college professor who just came back from a foreign country, visited Tang Haifeng. After hearing what had happened to Tang Yinfan, an idea dawned on Zhao Yiru. "Well, I can probably explain it, but I'm afraid that you won't believe me." "Just tell us," Tang Haifeng urged him. Everyone in the Tang family's house looked at Zhao Yiru with anticipation. Zhao Yiru then opened his mouth. "I heard that when someone is healthy but stays unconscious, it is because he isn't willing to wake up. Normally, the person may have an obsession and he can't get rid of it, so he's trapped by his dream and won't wake up. Isn't this superstition?" Tang Yunhang looked doubtful. "Well, it sounds like it could be true." Tang Haifeng, on the other hand, thought that it was possible. Anyway, there was no reasonable explanation till now. Quan Mingkai, at this time, frowned tightly because he knew Tang Yinfan very well and he understood that Tang Yinfan's obsession must be the memory dating back to 18 years ago. Tang Yinfan had lost control of himself because of it many times. Discover new stories at nv/lbin.c/o. "Mr. Zhao, how can we wake him up in that case?" Quan Mingkai asked. "If his obsession is a specific thing, we can help him finish it, then repeatedly tell him by his ears that it's already done and he'll relax and wake up. If his obsession is a person, then we need the person to talk to him and he might wake up then," Zhao Yiru said. "If it's real, we have to find out what Yinfan's obsession is," Chao Ruihua said. Although he was doubtful as well, he didn't want to miss any chance to wake Tang Yinfan up. "Exactly. However, none of us know what it is." Tang Yinfan had kept a distance from everyone in the Tang family, so nobody knew him that well. "If we can't figure out his obsession, will he stay unconscious forever?" Tang Yunron was worried. "Not really, we can have someone talk to him all the time. Say something important to him and he will probably wake up, but it isn't very effective compared with the way of figuring out his obsession. All in all, it's just a rough guess," Zhao Yiru said. Although it was just a rough guess, he thought that it was highly possible. In the beginning, Quan Mingkai hesitated to tell the Tang family the shocking secret, but it seemed like he had to do it right now for Tang Yinfan's safety, so he opened his mouth. I think that I probably know what Lord Tang's obsession is." Quan Mingkai believed that it had to be Tang Yinfan's obsession, but he remained cautious. "What? Really?" Everyone looked to Quan Mingkai, shocked. Quan Mingkai nodded, then said seriously, "Although I'm not 100% sure, I think that it's highly possible. In fact, Lord Tang went to City F to do a specific thing, which is also his obsession." "What is it? Tell us now." Tang Haifeng was very excited. "Tell us." Everyone urged Quan Mingkai. "To meet Gu Ning and her mother," Quan Mingkai said. "Doesn't everyone think that Gu Ning closely resembles Lord Tang? In fact, Gu Ning is Lord Tang's biological daughter." "What?" Hearing that, everyone rounded his or her eyes in shock. After the shock, they were all excited and delighted. Gu Ning had already left a great impression on them, and they also had accepted her as a member of their family, so it was actually good news if Gu Ning was Tang Yinfan's biological daughter. Most importantly, Tang Yinfan finally had his own child. Tang Yinfan's family was always worried that he would stay alone forever. In addition, they didn't care whether Gu Ning would compete against them for their family property. Money was just a string of numbers in their eyes and they valued family far above wealth. Even if Gu Ning became the sole heiress, nobody would disagree, because Tang Yunfan alone had built the Tang family's family business to be so successful, and it was totally reasonable if he wanted to leave his business to his daughter.
Really?
Tang Haifeng was excited as well as nervous. Although they haven't done a DNA test yet, I'm confident it's real. If it's a coincidence that Gu Ning closely resembles Lord Tang, would it be another coincidence that Lord Tang thinks that he must have met Gu Ning and her mother somewhere before? If coincidences happen a lot, it could be the truth, Quan Mingkai said. Hearing that, Tang Haifeng was finally relieved, but he was still very excited. Then what are we waiting for now? Send a private jet to pick Gu Ning and her mother up right now, so that Yunfan can wake up. Tang Yunrong said anxiously. Tang Haifeng, however, criticized her. Do you think it's that easy? Hearing that, everyone was confused and looked to Tang Haifeng. Although it's important to wake Yunfan up as soon as possible, it's also important to help Gu Ning acknowledge her roots and ancestors and welcome her mother back to the Tang family. Are you simply using them as tools to wake Yunfan up? Tang Haifeng said. Hearing that, everyone realized that what Tang Yunrong had just said was indeed a little selfish. Although Tang Yunfan was an important figure in the Tang family, his biological daughter and his wife were also their family members. I'm sorry. It's all my fault, Tang Yunrong apologized at once. When can we go to pick them up? We don't need to rush, Tang Haifeng said. He had to know more details before he took action. Although Yufan left Ningning's mother because of a car accident 18 years ago, it won't change the fact that he left Ningning's mother when she was pregnant. It must have hurt Ningning and her mother deeply, and Ningning's mother must have been under great pressure when she decided to give birth to Ningning. They also could have lived a hard life throughout the past years. If they hate Yunfan, they would probably be unwilling to see him again, Tang Haifeng said. Well, everyone remained silent now. What Tai Haifeng had said hit the point. Tang Yunfan had left Gu Ning and her mother because of a car accident, but it was an undeniable fact that he had hurt them deeply. They all hoped that Gu Ning and her mother could forgive Tang Yunfan, but talk was cheap, and they couldn't make the decision for others. Then, what should we do now? Tang Yunrong asked worriedly. Tang Haifeng asked Quan Mingkai, do Ningning and her mother know? It seems like they already know, but Lord Tang was in a car accident again before they were able to accept each other as family, Quan Mingkai said. What twists of fate the accidents were. What do they think of Yunfan? Tang Haifeng asked. Ms. Gu was very worried about Lord Tang, but I don't know much about their relationship, Quan Mingkai said. Tang Haifeng relaxed slightly. They still had hope after all. I'll call Ningning right now, Tang Haifeng said before walking back to his study. When he was in his study, he didn't call Gu Ning right away, but adjusted his emotions first. When Gu Ning received Tang Haifeng's call, she was eating. Seeing the caller's name, Gu Ning sensed that something must have happened to Tang Yunfan. Gu Ning didn't want Gu Man to be affected because of Tang Yunfan, so she walked out to answer the call. Hi, Grandpa, Gu Ning answered the call. Hi, girl Gu, what are you doing now? Tang Haifeng did his best to calm himself down, but he still sounded excited and nervous. I'm eating now. Grandpa, did anything new happen to Uncle Tang? Gu Ning asked with concern. Tang Haifeng was a little relaxed when he heard that Gu Ning was worried about Tang Yunfan. However, he felt a little sad when Gu Ning addressed Tang Yunfan as her Uncle Tang. Tang Yunfan was Gu Ning's biological father, but they had to keep a distance away from each other before they accepted each other as family. Yes, but we need your help, Tang Haifeng said. Get latest LCHDers on nve.lbj/n.c/m. What can I do? Gu Ning asked. One of my friends told me that Yunfan can't wake up is because he's trapped by his obsession, Tang Haifeng said. He didn't tell Gu Ning everything at once because he wanted to see her reaction. Obsession? Gu Ning cocked her eyebrow a little. What is it? Gu Ning didn't know that Tang Haifeng had already found out her real relationship with Tang Yunfan, so she didn't understand what he was talking about. Girl Gu, do you know why you closely resemble Yunfan? Tang Haifeng suddenly asked. Hearing that, Gu Ning immediately realized what Tang was talking about. Since he already found out, Gu Ning said it plainly, yes, I know. What do you and your mother think of Yunfan? Do you hate him? Tang Haifeng was nervous. Gu Ning understood that Tang Haifeng was worried. Grandpa, we don't hate him, because it was an accident and none of us wanted it to happen, Gu Ning said gently. In fact, I found out that Uncle Tang is my biological father a while ago, but he lost his memory so I didn't point it out. After that, Uncle Tang found out himself, and did some investigation. I have also laid my cards on the table before him because I want my mother to live a happy life. In the beginning, he planned to regain his memory before meeting my mother, because he thought that it's only fair. However, my mother encountered some trouble later, so he decided to advance the meeting with my mother. Unfortunately, he was in a car accident on his way to City F, Gu Ning said. Well truckers, that's all for this part. See you all in the next video.